All right, there it is. So let's, good evening, everybody. Let's take the call to order, the roll call.
Okay, Tim.
I'm here.
Trish.
Here.
Jim.
He's muted. He's here though.
He's here.
Okay. Christine. Lynette.
Present.
Thank you, Lynette. Yael?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, and Jan? No. Larry?
He said he's coming on.
He's coming. Okay, we got mark him coming. Sandra?
Yep.
Me. Okay, thanks, Tim.
All right, good to go?
Yes.
All right, so let's get this thing started. Meeting protocols. Locac welcomes all the opinions of others being discussed, but if you don't adhere to our standards of civic engagement, so forth in our policies and procedures manual, you'll be giving a warning. A second time you will be muted, and then you'll be asked to leave the meeting if you don't respect our policies and procedures. And on to county and local agency reports. Do we have a sheriff's report? Anybody from the sheriff this evening?
Yep, he's here. He's muted.
What's the first name? Sorry, I'm looking.
C. Langston.
Okay, there we go. You should be able to unmute. Okay, thanks.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for unmuting me.
Good evening.
So the statistics obviously didn't change too much since when I spoke earlier in the month. We had 69 calls for service versus 64 of last year, really comparable. The bulk majority of our calls were disturbance calls for Los Osos, just parties, disturbances, people yelling at each other, domestic disputes, things like that. There was a few thefts. Burglary, there was 2. Those are from locked vehicles. It did not involve a house. Not a super, nothing really remarkable to report on, but as always, I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have about what's going on in the community.
All right, great. So is there anybody on Locac that have a question for the officer? All right, anybody in the public has any questions?
And just a reminder to raise your hand. If you go at the bottom of your screen, you should see the reactions icon. If you click on that, there should be a raise hand button. If you click on that, that'll raise the hand. If anybody wanted to raise their hand, and then I'll call on you. And if you can't find it, just frantically wave right now and we'll see if
All right.
we can find you. Okay.
Well, thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you, you as well.
And do we have anybody from the Highway Patrol here tonight? No?
I don't see anyone.
Okay. And county staff report. I don't think that Carrie Brown is with us this evening, so we can move on to the supervisor report. And
Blake
I think
is here.
Blake is here in.
Yeah.
For the supervisor,
Blake?
probably.
Yeah. You there, Blake?
Yeah, there he is.
To be unmuted.
You should be able to unmute. Okay.
Unmuted. Yeah, I'm here on behalf of Supervisor Gibson, who unable to make it tonight, but sends his regards. And so while I may not be as eloquent, I am hopefully just as good and know that anything I get asked or I can bring back to him, or I could maybe even handle it myself. So as far as some Los Osos specific stuff, I did just want to let everybody know, I got Public Works got a hold of me today. The signal at LOVR in South Bay that got damaged in the car wreck I think that was last month. That got taken for quite a drag when that happened. So some of the internal parts were badly damaged and had to get some specialty parts. But long story short is those will be here next week and they'll be getting that signal fixed and back in operating order. So thanks for everyone's patience. Well, I think that's just been in yellow or flashing red since then. Also of note to Los Osos is, I think it was on May 14th, I'd have to check the specific date, but the Coastal Commission did approve some changes that we had made to the coastal plan in regards to code enforcement. I think you may have heard us mention in some meetings past that we were looking to change the process and install a code enforcement hearing officer to expedite cases that were brought up, so they weren't, potentially going all the way up to the Board of Supervisors. These will then be instead heard by a hearing officer, and if someone disagrees with the decision there, they could take it to court. But that they've already got their docket filling up with coastal cases. So if anything of note, of course, don't feel afraid to contact us and ask any questions on that. As far as what the board is doing, the big one for next month is discussing budget. That'll be on, I got to pull up my calendar, June 14th through the 16th, with the 15th is actually set aside as a special meeting, it looks like, for discussing the ARPA funds. This is the American Rescue Plan Act funds. So the county is in a much better fiscal spot than we thought a couple months ago with the federal package. And we'll be seeing how some of those monies get divvied up as far as COVID relief on the 15th. That's about all I had prepared for tonight, but of course, happy to answer any questions or take any notes that I could take back to the supervisor and get back to anybody on.
All right, thanks, Blake.
Yeah.
Is there anybody on the board that has any questions? Sue?
Thank you. Blake, could you please explain this code enforcement hearing officer and procedure? Who okayed it and what does it mean exactly? Could you please repeat that? I was somewhat confused.
No, not a problem at all. So in previous, if there was code enforcement action that would, in theory, be able to go through the board, and it would be a longer and more cumbersome process with potential, different appeals. So this was a change that we had made to. It was a lot easier on the inland side, and putting in a hearing officer through code enforcement. That if a resolution would not be able to be found with someone who had a code enforcement case against them, this could now go to a public hearing. And so the Coastal Commission, because this was in the coastal zone, just recently approved that. So that is now installed for the coast as well. Does that make sense? I hope I explained that well.
So what just explain if there was a code enforcement thing, like somebody was building something they shouldn't, say,
And
for
refuse to
example.
come into compliance.
Yeah, then they would.
And say that the different fines and levies being put on the property were still not remedying the problem.
Okay.
It would then go to hearing, because it usually, we'll work for some sort of agreement with someone to get something fixed. If that doesn't work, we'll then turn to some sort of fine or levy put on the property. And sometimes that doesn't work. We've had some situations up in Cambria with vacation rental specifically, where someone said, I'm not worried about these fines you're putting on me. I think that I am justified in my illegal operation, and that would be the kind of thing that would now go before a hearing officer.
And what if it's not resolved with the hearing officer?
Then there's a legal injunction, and we can force it through the
Okay,
court.
thank you.
All right, thanks, Blake. And anybody else on the board that has a question? I see there's a hand up from Patrick McGivney.
I'm not on the board, but if anybody else on the board would like to speak first, I will wait.
Doesn't look like anybody is, so you've got the
Okay.
floor.
All right, thank you, Blake. I have two questions for you.
Sure.
One is, who would we report code violations to? Specifically, there is a house that has been abandoned on 3rd Street in Baywood, right next to the Beerwood. It's been like that for the last decade or more. And it's getting its mailbox with notices from the county, but the people don't answer it. It is owned by an attorney that is in San Luis Obispo, but he will not answer any calls. It has abandoned cars and boats, and it's overgrown with weeds. It's a fire hazard and a health hazard. And nothing has been done. I've notified the county several times about that, but who else would I notify? That's one question. And the second question that I have is that I understand that the county has received $85 million from COVID relief from the feds, and $55 million of that is supposed to go to unincorporated areas. Has Los Osos Baywood area received, or has any of that been earmarked for our area? And those are my questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Not a
Patrick.
problem. Let me answer that second one first. It's a little bit easier. So that will be the discussion on the 15th. There isn't yet an earmark for any specific locality as far as how those funds are to be spent, but the money you're referring to is going to be what is decided at that June 15th Board of Supervisors meeting. That's question 2. Question 1, it would still be through code enforcement. If there's anything I might be able to be of help with on that and in making something, I would encourage you to CC me on any correspondence with code enforcement, and I can help make sure that stuff gets resolved. I don't know the specifics of why that particular house on 3rd Street had not been addressed yet, but I'm certainly happy to help find some sort of resolution. So the short answer is code enforcement, and feel free to include me on any correspondence. Thank you, sir. I
Thank you, Blake.
see also
And
that
Jeff
Mr.
Edwards?
Yeah,
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you, Blake. I have a question for you to take back to the supervisor, if you
Sure.
would. There's recently been a posting, as you may know, for a groundwater agency director.
mhm,
This is a position that is going to be housed in the administrative office. And according to the job description on Indeed, it appears that this individual is going to be involved in the Los Osos groundwater basin management. So my question is, what are the implications for the Basin Management Committee and its endeavors, and how would this individual interface with that process? I will just say, as an opinion, we have many cooks in the kitchen already. I don't think the Basin Management Committee would benefit from additional bureaucracy. And unfortunately, the county's thumb is already on the scale, and I don't think we need another thumb on that scale. So again, I'd appreciate hearing back, and maybe at the next BMC or at your convenience. Again, what are the implications for Los Osos with this new position? Thank you.
understood. Thanks for the question. That one's a little above my capacity to answer, but happy to get an answer for you and get back to you either shortly or at the next BMC. But I think I got it down adequately. Thank you.
You betcha.
All right, any other questions for Blake, for Supervisor Gibson? All right, thank you very much. Have a good evening.
My pleasure. I'll stick around.
All right. And do we have anybody for the CSD report this evening?
Maybe Chuck? You
Yeah,
need-
Here.
there you are.
You-
Yeah.
Am I unmuted?
Yes.
You are unmuted, sir.
Okay.
Good evening.
Okay. CSD, we've got a lot going on right now. First, some good news, a bike path, pedestrian path that we've been working on to link 8th Street and Farrell. That should be going out to bid June 3rd. And that'll be a nice little connector that'll allow people to avoid 9th Street if you're trying to travel from the north end of town down to Rexall or that side of the signal there. Bids June 3rd. We are just wrapping up a budget year, getting ready for the next year, and I'm happy to say that we're in a great position fiscally. We've been able to weather all the infrastructure needs that come at us. Some of our wells have been acting up this past year or two, and we've been able to deal with it, keep them online. They're back online. We actually pay cash for vehicles when we buy them, including our fire truck recently, $750,000 purchase. We're in a good place, operating pay as you go. Also on June 3rd, we're gonna go out to bid for a new well at 8th Street. We have a well there, if you know, at 8th and Elmore. It's a lower aquifer well. This is an upper aquifer well to take the pressure off the lower well. It's been in the works for several years now. We've actually completed plans a few years back. We've been waiting for a grant from the State Water Resources Control Board, and it's a major $250,000 grant or so. So we've put this project on hold for a year or two. Finally, it's coming to fruition. I'm hoping that a board action on the 3rd will allow us to start a bid process on the 4th. And that's nice. It's always good to have backups for your wells. And regarding wells, we have a brand new well, Program C well. Program C refers to part of the basin management plan that calls on each of the water purveyors to enact specific projects over the next couple of years. And this is a well we've had planned. It's going to go in Bayview Heights, above the, well, at South Bay, just head south up the hill there where we had the community's septic tanks previously. So it's a CSD owned property. The environmental review is underway. Final comments are due on the mitigated negative declaration on June 19th. And we hope to be moving ahead with that within the year. That's going to be a major expense for us, but we are prepared. Also, we're working with the other water purveyors on a letter that the Coastal Commission has asked for regarding the additional dwelling unit issue. As you know, that the community plan and additional dwelling units are a hot issue right now. And the Coastal Commission asked for a letter from water purveyors. And we're trying to come up with a unified response so that the different areas of the community are essentially acting under the same regulations when we come through this. As you know, the 3 water purveyors are all structured differently. We have a mutual company, S&T Sunset Terrace is owned by the property owners there. The CSD is a nonprofit governmental entity, and Golden State is a for-profit enterprise run by, or actually who has to go through the PUC, Public Utilities Commission, to get approval for anything that they do regarding rates or actions, which leads to an interesting situation where they actually have less of an ability to deny new water connections if they don't feel that the basin is ready for it. Whereas the CSD, Sunset Terrace, we could deny those kind of things if we don't feel that the basin's ready. So we're trying to come up with that letter. Some of the issues that we're looking at are refining the potential for water conservation here in the community. We want the county to update Title 19. As you know, a lot of the additional dwelling units that are expected to be happening are going to be allowed through Title 19, which is retrofitting. And we just want to make sure that there's accurate data to justify the conservation potential. And then there's the issue of this new development takes all the conservation potential. How about the existing customers and trying to save water for ourselves? Complicated issue. We hope to have a letter before the CSD board in June. Stay tuned for that. And I think that's about all I have for now.
All right. Thank you very much. And do we have any questions from the board members?
Sue?
Thanks. I'm sorry, Chuck, there was some noise going on and you were talking about the bike path on Farrell, or where is that bike path that you're hoping to get bid out on June 3rd?
It's on CSD property. The lot connects Farrell on the west side, and I think it's 8th Street or maybe 7th on the east side. It's a footpath that's been there for years and years and years. People talked about using it to access Sunnyside Elementary back when they went to school there.
And what is
So
it?
it would be a way for the community to get over to the park and that kind of thing without having to deal with the intersection there at 9th and Los Osos Valley Road.
Sure, I understand that, but exactly where is the path? What are the two? It's connecting. I'm sorry, I'm still not hearing it right. Can you tell me it's connecting?
I don't have a map ready. So Farrell and Bush kind of parallel each other and then come together at the north end. And Farrell is an extension that goes out to a dead end there.
Mhm.
There's a piece of property that the CSD owns that is bounded by Farrell on the west and It's either 8th or 7th on the
7th.
east.
7th on the east.
7th, okay. And so it's used now as a footpath. We're going to go in and improve it, put some asphalt down and make it a full bike path.
Okay, great, thanks.
All right, any other questions from board members? Questions from the public? See anybody, Sandra?
I'm looking. I don't see anybody. I had one question, Chuck.
Yes.
Is there consensus among the 3 water purveyors around what they want to see with the ADUs and getting and having, like you said, so it's across the board of who can develop ADUs and who can't?
That's what we're trying to come to, is a consensus. There's been way more dialogue recently with the water purveyors. I'm really encouraged by that, and the Basin Management Committee as a whole seems to be much more active. The dialogue these days, maybe because the community plan is such an important factor that we have to resolve these issues before that moves ahead. So we're trying to come to consensus. It's, again, not easy given that we all operate under different rules. But the main thing that we want to see is data, real specific hard data that indicates that the basin is not giving ground. You'll hear later on tonight with the Basin Management Committee annual report that will be presented. The salt levels in the wells have deteriorated a bit. The freshwater levels over the salt levels are holding even. So we're not making a lot of progress toward the criteria that we had set to ensure that we've got a sustainable basin yet. We're meeting the targeted goal for the sustainable yield, but again, that's a theoretical target. If it doesn't result in measurable improvement in the salt and the freshwater criteria, then maybe that target needs to be reevaluated, and you'll hear more about that. Basin Management Committee is going to be looking at a lot of those criteria and just updating models and a lot of things coming up in the next year. And thank you for paying attention to this. And a side note on my own, the homeless committee subcommittee that you've set up, thank you. This community needs that kind of action. And Locac, your website's looking good. Thank you.
Yael has a question.
Chuck, so if we're going to kind of get some standards across the water purveyors, is that going to affect the ability of us getting permit for new building in our area other than Baywood, where we cannot build right now? Is that going to affect other areas that are outside of the old moratorium area?
The prohibition zone.
Prohibition zone. Exactly. Thank you.
Right now, everything is pretty well tied to the prohibition zone. Outside the prohibition zone, rules are different, and Title 19 applies, and I'm not really an expert on what goes on outside the prohibition zone.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
No other questions. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
You're welcome.
And do we have somebody here for the Chamber of Commerce report?
Yep. On a different note altogether, the new chamber directory is coming out theoretically next week. I would call the office to make sure, and you'd have to call the office to make an appointment to pick some up anyway, because we are not open. We hope to be open sometime in June. Don't know yet. Lindy, you will be happy that there is a map in the middle of the book. And also, we're having an actual event at the end of June. I'll tell you more about it next month at Locac. It'll be the last couple of days of June. I think it's the 28th and 29th, somewhere in there. And it's Festival of Flavor. And it's getting food from local restaurants to taste and try out. And I'm not really sure how it's going to be formulated this time, but look forward to that. It will be a fun event. And that's all I have for right now.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions from board members? Questions from the community? All right, thanks, Lynette. And public comment for items that are not on the agenda. If anybody would like to speak on something, you have 3 minutes, and we're not going to have any discussion on these items for purposes of time. So is there anybody that would like to say something?
I see Tom and then Cecile.
All right. In the order they were putting their hand up, I guess.
I tried, yep.
Hi, I'm Tom Cantwell, and I'm not
Jim
sure.
has his hand up.
Jim is asking to unmute
sorry.
him.
Sorry.
Should I wait? I apologize.
Yeah, sorry, Tom, 1 second. Jim, you should be able to unmute.
Nice to be able to participate in my own meeting here.
Hey, Jim. Good evening.
This Festival of Flavors has been changed. Sorry, Lynette is not up to date. I'm the chair of the committee. Moving it to the month of July. It'll be all month long. And it will be a passport. Passport will take you to at least a dozen restaurants in the community where you will receive bonus, as it were, at that particular restaurant. So we're still putting it together, but that's the date. A passport will cost you $35. You'll get a lot of food at least 12 different restaurants anytime during the month of July.
Great. Thanks, Jim.
Yeah. I'll go back to sleep.
And don't.
Okay. Public comment?
Hi, I'm Tom Cantwell. And I'm not sure if this is the right time. I see on your agenda that you talk later in your business meeting about seating the elected people from the last election for Locac.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
And I don't see anywhere where we discuss, because I feel that the election for District 4 was not handled correctly according to your rules and regulations. And I kind of feel it's real disheartening. I walked around and met a lot of people and talked about a lot of issues for District 4, which I've lived in off and on since 1985. I did sit on this advisory council for 4 years, from 2012 to 2015. And the election guidelines say that you had to have your paperwork in by a certain date. I had mine in a couple of weeks before the date. And then the person that got the most votes had their paperwork in 5 days after the date and was allowed to run in the election, which is kind of shows that Locac isn't following their own rules. And I find that disheartening, as I worked really hard to get the small amount of votes I got. And I've never seen in any of the elections previously where so many votes were garnered by one person. So I applaud whatever the woman that got those votes, Deborah Howe, but I think that she shouldn't even have been allowed to run. And I'm just wondering if Locac, the election committee, can explain to myself and to the other gentlemen who both had our paperwork on time why we let Deborah Howe in to run on this election when she didn't have her paperwork in time, so she wasn't able to run, and the people that voted for her really voted for somebody who was not able to be seated as a member of Locac. But it looks like you guys are trying to go forward with that, and I think it's totally wrong, and that this should be looked at. And this election of a person who had their name in after the deadline should be invalidated. And the election should be given to the person that got the most votes, who has their election paperwork in time, and that was me.
Okay, Tom. Well, I appreciate your concern, and I understand, your frustration with the whole thing. What happened at the last Locac meeting was this was actually brought up. There was another person in District 2, I believe, that also had their application in late, and due to the pandemic and everything that's been happening, we, as an election committee, approved all of the applications that came in late. So it wasn't just District 4. It wasn't isolated just to District 4. It was actually all the districts were able to. I mean, it was a guideline meant for a specific purpose, but obviously we live in a crazy time, and it's been very hard to develop this body over Zoom and everything else. And so as a committee, it was approved and Locac approved it at the last meeting. So everybody had the same amount of time to, you know, garner votes and do everything for the election. So it wasn't a specific thing for District 4, but I understand your concern, and, you know, thank you for bringing it up.
Well, I'd like to respond a little bit to what you just said. That's not how things are done in Locac. And the other person was in a district that had nobody running. This is like a sham election, Tim. I can't believe that you're trying to say it had to do with that. And you didn't announce that. You're just announcing it now. This was
brought up at the last Locac meeting. The same concern was brought up.
It was brought up.
But it was brought up, so.
It was brought up, it was voted on. Mute.
Okay, we're moving on.
Cecile was first.
Oh. You want to wait? Just hold on, Tom. We're moving on to the next public comment. Thank you, Cecile. Cecile, can you unmute? You should be able to unmute.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
My name is Cecile Serbeck, and I just wanted to take a moment to thank Locac and supporting our neighborhood. I would like to encourage Locac to look at the coastal codes, and just because SLO Building and Planning Department and the Board of Supervisors support a project, it does not mean it's allowed land use. Thank you for helping and not hurting our neighborhood and community of Los Osos. And congratulations, Deborah. Thank you.
And Jeff has his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee members, my name is Jeff Edwards, and I have to agree with Mr. Cantwell, and I believe Mr. Vinson at the last meeting raised issues about the election. Unfortunately, Locac has engaged in a pattern of legislating on the fly. And this is whether it's new development or vacation rental rules, election rules. It just seems that the guidelines are chosen, again, on the fly. I don't believe if you voted on this matter last time, I think that was a Brown Act violation because the matter was not agendized. Is somebody interrupting me? I'm sorry.
Nope.
So it was not an agendized item. So if you had a vote again, that vote is void. It has no meaning. So I'm not sure what the answer here is, but the appearance is, and I don't know Ms. Howe at all, but the appearance is that the Locac majority has handpicked this individual because she's like-minded. And that's the last thing we need is more people that are thinking the same way. The strength of a panel such as yours is diversity of opinion. And there is less and less and less diversity of opinion in this organization as time passes. So again, I'm not sure what the answer is, but I think you need to revisit the representation in District 4. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Patrick had his hand up.
Thank you. I would just like to commend the Locac and their decision of allowing more people to be running. This was a COVID time. This was not just a normal time or normal election period. So it wasn't that they were choosing somebody that had the same ideas or values that they do, because it was the people of the community that voted for Ms. Howe. And it wasn't the Locac choosing her and putting her in. The community did that. And I do congratulate her for all of her votes and thank Locac for the wisdom of allowing other members of the community to run during a COVID time that were maybe a little late getting in. So that's what my comment is. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Patrick. Okay, do we have any other items not on the
Steve,
agenda?
Yeah, Steve, hold
Steve
on.
is-
I'm just finding him here on the thing. Okay. You should be able to unmute, Steve.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, Tim, I don't think there's equivalency between District 2 and District 4. District 2 had no one who wanted to run, right? Nobody. And so it didn't matter if he came late, he came early. Whenever he marches in with his application, he's in. At least that's the way it usually works for some people. And the other one is that you've got two viable candidates. One candidate who had already served on Locac, and myself, I've served the community for 10 years. We were set to go. And you know, so I don't believe in that argument that you guys are putting forth about, well, we're letting them all go. That's insincere. I'm sorry. So anyway, I wasn't planning on talking tonight. Congratulations to Deborah. I hope you do well. Thanks.
All right, any other items not on the agenda?
I don't see any more
Okay,
hands
we
raised.
can move on to approve the minutes from the April 22nd meeting. Do we have a motion to accept the minutes?
Yeah, I'll move to accept the minutes, please.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, Lynette, second. All in favor? Aye.
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 All those opposed? No opposed. Okay. April minutes approved. Locac committee reports, treasurer's report. Do we have anybody here for the treasurer's report? Nope.
Christine's not here.
All right, land use. Larry, do we have anything from land use?
Hold on. Should I unmute your phone or your video, Larry?
Phone.
Okay, let me
Phone.
find the phone number here. I can't find the phone number. I'm gonna try to unmute his video.
I don't know. We are not going to hear him.
Larry, can you? Larry, talk. Let's see if we can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
No, he does not. No. Yeah, you see Larry phone here. I'll see. Ask to unmute here. I found it. Larry, I'm unmuted you. Can you talk?
Okay. This should work.
Yes.
Yes, we canceled our meeting this month. There was nothing on the agenda.
All right, thanks for the update. And traffic and circulation, Jan is not here with us this evening. See, trees and circulation, or trees and landscaping, Yale.
Well, we also had to postpone the meeting because we did not have much progress. We're still working on the same major project of the El Moro Trail.
And unhoused residents forum.
Well, we keep working very hard on the short-term services. We're providing the unhoused residents on Palisade Avenue. We're working hard mostly around trash. We are almost there regarding providing shower services. And people are doing the best they can under the circumstances. And we also have very serious progress towards long-term solution. I don't want to say anything right now, but I think I see some light in the end of the tunnel. Can't say time-wise, but I think that it's promising. So eventually, people will be transitioning from Palisade Avenue, where we know it's not appropriate location for them, to a place where it's sanctioned, it's safe, and they will receive all of the services and the help, mental and other help, job, whatever it is that they need. And we are working closely with the county, with the supervisor, with the nonprofit, both service providers and others. So we're doing all we can be able to do.
Okay. All All right,
And
thank you.
Jim wanted to comment as well.
Yeah, I just
Jim?
wanted to add, Yale and I have been talking about the showers. The people helping people have the money to buy the shower unit. They need a place to put it. Blake has been working with the county works and that county place, and Richard Markinson, who is kind of in control of the person on this project, is talking with the man to make sure we have water both in and out and electricity. We're wanting to get a 2-year guarantee of placing it there so that we don't just plop it in and then have to move it again. So those are things that are in progress. Blake is helping to move that along.
Yep, doing great job, Blake. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Yale. And outreach, Sandra, do we have anything new to add to outreach?
Nope, this is the newsletter I put out. If anybody wants to volunteer, has a student in mind that would want to help with social media and just that avenue, that would be a great project. And I could work with them on that.
It's a great newsletter.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for doing it. That's
Just
great.
send, I always need info, so
Mm-hmm.
send it my way.
All right. Okay, on to the regular agenda items. We have a presentation of the draft 2020 Los Osos Basin Annual Monitoring Report by Daniel Heimel of the Basin Management Committee. Do we have him here? And can
Yeah,
we
he's
share his
here.
screen? I'm
Yep.
sure he has a presentation.
His screen's a little wonky, but
Yeah, I'm gonna probably have to turn off my video, but thank you, members of Locac, for the opportunity to present the draft 2020 Los Osos Basin Annual Monitoring Report prepared by the Basin Management Committee. Looks like I need screen sharing capability. If somebody could provide that.
Yeah, let me see if I can do that. Does that work? Can you see it now?
Yep, I'm all set. Can everyone see the screen, the presentation?
no.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yes, I need to click the next button. How about now?
Now we got it.
Yeah, we got it.
So I wanted to start off my presentation. Again, this is a presentation on the draft 2020 Los Osos Basin Annual Monitoring Report prepared by the Basin Management Committee. I wanted to start the presentation with just a very brief overview of the Basin Management Committee for those of you that may or may not be familiar with what I will refer to as the BMC, or the Basin Management Committee. The BMC was formed as part of the 2015 Interlocutory Stipulated Judgment, or I think is more commonly referred to the ISJ. That was basically, so it was formed as part of the adjudication of the Los Osos Basin. The parties to the ISJ include the Los Osos Community Services District, Golden State Water Company, S&T Mutual Water Company, and the County of San Luis Obispo. And representatives from those parties make up the board of directors for the Basin Management Committee. The BMC is tasked with overseeing the implementation of the Los Osos Basin Plan, as well as monitoring and preparing an annual monitoring report on the health of the basin, which is submitted to the court. This slide is a basin overview slide, also included to help those that may not be familiar with the Los Osos Basin. This is an aerial map of the community with this dark blue line representing the Los Osos Basin boundary. A couple of features I want to point out here, and they'll come up throughout the presentation, is we really, at the BMC, we kind of talk about the basin in different sort of regions. We have the western portion of the basin in orange, the central portion in a lightish red color, and then the eastern portion of the basin shown in blue here. And those are important distinctions because they have pretty significant impacts with respect to the hydrogeology and where the pumping occurs, or where the pumping occurs within those sections impacts the basin. This figure is a cross section of the basin. So actually, if we go back, if you see this B to B line, this is the line over the, the geography. If we were to then slice down that line and take a cross section, this would be a conceptual image of the basin as we know it and understand it. There's a lot going on this picture. I really just want to kind of focus on a couple of things. If you've attended the BMC or even in this presentation, you hear quite a bit of talk about the upper aquifer. So that's this zone C area shown in blue, and then the lower aquifer. The lower aquifer is comprised of zone D and E. And just some high level information, the upper aquifer, this is the portion of the aquifer that's been contaminated with nitrates, and large portions of the upper aquifer have become unusable due to the nitrate contamination. Because of that, a good amount of the pumping has been focused on the lower aquifer. Unfortunately, the challenge with the lower aquifer is that it has connectivity to the ocean and is susceptible to seawater intrusion. And we'll cover more of the different aspects of the upper and lower aquifer later in the presentation. So there's a lot of numbers that come out of the annual report. And so I wanted to go through some of these numbers with the Locac tonight. This first slide shows production. So in this upper table, we have 2019 production for reference, and then we have 2020 production that occurred within the basin. The first three numbers here represent the water purveyor production, and this is metered production that the water purveyors track and provide to the BMC. And then on the bottom portion, we have what estimated production for other basin uses. So domestic wells on private wells, community facilities, and agricultural wells. You can tell relative to 2019, production increased. It's estimated to have increased to 110 acre feet per year. Acre feet is going to be the unit of measurement that we're going to use throughout this presentation, and the BMC typically utilizes. That increased production is associated with increased water purveyor production, as well as an estimated increased agricultural and community facility production in 2020. This bottom table also shows production, but it takes a more of a historical look and goes back to 2013. What important to note here is that the trend in production, even though it was up in 2020, overall is down. So that's the good news. Back in 2013, production was as high as 2,560 acre feet. And over the last 7 years has come down to around 2,000 acre feet. And that's really, largely been attributed to the conservation efforts of the community. This is a graph that also shows production in a graphical form. Sometimes it's a little easier to visualize. So this is total production. This goes back to the 1970s. And as you can see in the 70s, there was an increase in production associated with new development in Los Osos, peaking in the late 80s. And then slowly we've been on a declining trend in production. The most rapid declines coming in the early 2000s, but we've still seen declining numbers, as I mentioned earlier, from 2013 to where we are today at about 2,000 acre feet. And I need to misspoke there. This is just showing production in the western area of the basin. So all those numbers are the same, the trends are the same, but this is a good thing because production in the western portion of the basin creates a much higher likelihood of seawater intrusion than production in the central or eastern portions of the basin. Okay, actually, I have to take that back again. That was total production. This is production in the western area of the basin. So first slide, total production. This slide, western area. And you can see the trend is similar, which is good. As I indicated, we want to reduce production in the western portion of the basin. And there are dedicated basin programs in the basin plan to do that. Another key metric for water in Los Osos is rainfall. Basically, all the water in Los Osos is provided from local groundwater, which is highly dependent on rainfall to recharge the groundwater basin. So we have a couple of graphs here. One of the things to point out here, just sort of near term, unfortunately, rainfall in 2020 was below average. So the average rainfall for the Los Osos landfill, which is not shown on here, but is one of the rain gauges we use, is about 16 inches per year. Unfortunately, last year, in 2020, total rainfall was 13.88 inches. And so this graph just shows rainfall amounts over time. This graph shows the cumulative departure from the mean. So what it really shows is when the graph is going up, we're in a period of heavy rainfall and we're getting more years of above average rainfall. When the graph is going down, we're in a drought or a dry period, and we're getting more years of below average rainfall than above average rainfall. Unfortunately, looking at this data, we've been in a drought. We're in a declining pattern of rainfall since about 2005. The Basin Management Committee, in order to assess and evaluate the condition of the basin, established a number of metrics. And the metrics are designed to be able to simplify and quantify the health of the basin in a couple of repeatable measurements and boiled down numbers that give an indication of, again, the health of the basin. The first metric, and we'll go into more detail on these on the further slides, but the basin yield metric, it's a metric that compares the amount of pumping that occurred in the calendar year with the estimated sustainable yield of the basin. And the target for the basin yield metric is to be 80 or less. The 2020 value was 73, which is below 80, which is good. It did represent, however, a deterioration from the 2019 value, which was 69. But we'll go into what that means, because really when we're looking at these metrics, we're interested in the longer term trends, not necessarily as much focused on the year-to-year variations. The water level metric, this is a metric that takes the average water levels in designated key wells and tracks that. This is an important metric because the water level in these wells, and these are lower aquifer wells, is what helps keep seawater intrusion at bay. So in 2020, the water level metric had a value of 1.8 feet. This actually represented a zero change from the 2019 value, which also had 1.8 feet as the metric value. The chloride metric, this is a measure of the chloride concentration, an indicator of seawater intrusion in key wells in the lower aquifer. It has a target value of 100 milligrams per liter or lower. In 2020, the value of the chloride metric was 205 milligrams per liter, which is higher than the metric. In this case, that is an undesirable result. Additionally, there was a deterioration from 2019, or an increase in the chloride metric, so representing a year-over-year deterioration. But again, we'll look at the longer trend in some of the next slides. And then finally, the nitrate metric. This is the nitrate metric. As I mentioned earlier, the upper aquifer has experienced nitrate contamination. So a metric was established to be able to track the progress of that contamination through programs such as the water recycling facility and others that are improving the quality of the upper aquifer. The goal for the nitrate metric is 10 milligrams or lower. Unfortunately, right now, the concentration of the nitrate metric is 20 milligrams per liter, but it did come down from 2019. So that is an improvement relative to the 2019 value. And again, we'll look at the longer term trends in later slides. So as I mentioned, we want to look at the longer term trends. This is a graph that shows the fluoride metric in red, and then also the water level metric in blue, going back again to the 1970s or 80s. Starting with the chloride metric, we did see an increase in the chloride metric in 2020. But it is lower than the highest values we've seen in the chloride metric. So that is beneficial, but it is, trending in the wrong direction currently. The water level metric, as I mentioned, remained stable. We saw no change recently. We were seeing an increase in the water level metric. That was beneficial. Unfortunately, that has slowed down. And so these are the trends that the BMC is tracking and observing as part of its annual monitoring program. One of the things that we want to do is have an understanding of were we anticipating these metrics to do. A lot of detailed science and evaluation went into the development of the basin plan. And the basin plan identified programs to capture water from the Los Osos water recycling facility and discharge at the Broderson leach field in an effort to create a mound of water in the upper aquifer that would push down to the lower aquifer and ultimately would be able to push seawater intrusion back. And so there were model runs done and analysis completed to predict what that would look like over time. And so this next slide shows what the people, the staff that were involved in the development of the basin plan anticipated to happen over time. And they anticipated an increase in the chloride metric over time. And when you can, so the anticipated values are shown in the dashed lines here. The actual values are shown in the solid lines. They also have different icons. So there was an anticipated increase in the chloride metric until about the late 2020s, not quite 2030. And then it was anticipated that the chloride metric would start to decline. And then similarly, it was anticipated the water level metric would increase over time. The water level metric was tracking relative to that, though the last 2 years we did see that stop continuing to increase. This is a graph of the nitrate metric. There's a lot going on here. I'll just try to move through this one quickly. The nitrate metric is actually a 5-year running average. Like the other metrics are a snapshot of values from that year, whereas the nitrate metric actually looks back at the last 5 years and creates an average values from those key wells. So just a couple of things to point out here. Nitrate concentrations in the nitrate metric have actually been declining for a couple of years. And so that's been positive. This is the first year that the 5-year average has actually declined because we're starting to move away from these historic high numbers that we observed back in 2016 and 2017. So the nitrates are starting to trend the right direction, and that's a positive sign. One of the things you'll see in the annual report is this figure that shows historic estimates of seawater intrusion within the community. And so this is something that the BMC is tracking very closely, as it is a very strong indicator of basin health and basin sustainability. This first line here, this cyan line, represents where we thought the seawater intrusion front was in 2005. In 2016, the seawater intrusion front was estimated to have intruded much further inland, shown by this purple line here. With the wetter years we had in 2017 and 2019, it was predicted that the seawater intrusion front was pushed back quite a ways, shown by this green line here. Unfortunately, in 2020, there's an estimating that the seawater intrusion did intrude further inland based on the observed conditions in the wells, and specifically LA10. And it's characterized as representing a localized movement of it gets pretty technical, but the 250 milligram per liter chlorine isopleth is the metric that's used to track the seawater intrusion front. And then just one other thing of note here, this red line represents the seawater intrusion front in zone E. So I should have mentioned all of these other lines represent zone E, that upper portion of the lower aquifer, and this is the lower portion of the lower aquifer, zone E. And its intrusion is further inland. That's to be anticipated because seawater is heavier than freshwater and tends to intrude further inland in the lower portions of the aquifer. It creates a wedge, as they describe it. Another, it's not quite a metric, it's a upper water level profile, but it's something that the Basin Management Committee tracks to assess the benefit of the basin. The upper water level profile was established because some of the earlier basin programs, programs A and C, specifically program A, looked to shift some of the pumping from the lower aquifer to the upper aquifer to improve sustainability. The concern was, though, if we shift too much pumping to the upper aquifer, we won't have enough water pressure in the upper aquifer to keep seawater intrusion out of the upper aquifer. And hence the upper water level profile was established. And it basically, it tracks water levels along this profile, right along the bay at these key wells. And again, if you use that, this is the aerial view, and then you take a cross section, this is what the upper water level profile looks like. The blue line represents the water levels in those key wells, and the red line represents what we call the protective elevation, or the elevation we want to see in the water level profile to prevent seawater intrusion in the upper aquifer. And so the upper water level profile is positive. It is above the protective elevation. So as I mentioned before at the beginning, the BMC is tasked with implementation of the basin plan. And those of you familiar with the basin plan know that there are a number of different programs included in the basin plan. Two programs have projects that are underway. And so this is a status table of all the different basin programs with ongoing projects. But I wanted to just highlight a couple of these projects. And actually, I guess Director Cesena mentioned this first one, the upper aquifer well on 8th Street. This is a Los Osos Community Services District project to equip that was a well that was drilled back in 2016. It's been on hold for waiting on grant funding, but that grant funding has come through. And I believe it was mentioned earlier that construction of the remaining components of that well is going to go out to bid here in June. So promising progress on that program that will again assist in shifting more of that upper aquifer pumping to, the lower aquifer pumping to the upper aquifer to reduce the stress on the lower aquifer. The other project I wanted to highlight was additionally mentioned by Director Cesena, but that was the LOCSD's expansion well number 2. This is part of program C. Program A looks to shift pumping from the lower aquifer to the upper aquifer. Program C looks to shift pumping from the western portion of the basin, as we looked at earlier, to the central portion of the basin. And the CSD has selected a site and is working through the environmental and permitting components of necessary to construct that well, and is anticipating construction to begin in Q1 2022. Included in the annual report are a number of recommendations, as well as kind of a status update on initiatives. I can move through these pretty quickly, but a licensed surveyor was procured to survey the wellheads throughout the community in 2020, and that was completed. There was water quality analysis done on FW6. That was something that hadn't been able to be done for a couple of years because of a lack of water in that well. There is an initiative to install transducers. These are continuous pressure monitors that allow the collection of a lot of groundwater level data in and around the area of the Broderson Mound. And so that's an initiative that's currently underway. And then reevaluating the water level metric targets. That's an initiative that's planned for later this year for the BMC. Just some additional recommendations were included: developing a rating curve for the Los Osos stream gauge. We have a stream gauge on Los Osos Creek. It's right on the bridge or near the bridge on LOVR, coming down from the cemetery if you're coming into town. It collects height of water data, but we don't have a way to correlate that to flow, which is an important metric for understanding basin recharge. There's also a recommendation to improve the monitoring well network for monitoring zone E. That's that lower portion of the aquifer. And then a recommendation to update the sustainable yield estimates to account for new information that we have on the program C wells and recycled water availability estimates. Not all on this slide, we have what we characterizing as key 2021 initiatives. Not all of these are incorporated in the annual report, but I wanted to highlight these for the Locac as key initiatives that the Basin Management Committee will be working on throughout the remainder of 2021. One is developing updated estimates of sustainable yield. This is something that's actually required as part of the stipulated judgment. And so the BMC will be going through the exercise of developing updated sustainable yield estimates. Additionally, the BMC will be reviewing and evaluating its basin metrics. We spent quite a bit of time talking about the basin metrics. It's good, I think it was mentioned earlier, to reevaluate those basin metrics periodically. We have opportunities to potentially improve those metrics. One of the things that the BMC completed, let's say 2019, was a new monitoring well by Cuesta by the Sea or on Lupine Avenue. And so we want to evaluate the opportunity to incorporate that well and all the good data that it's providing us into the basin metrics. Another initiative that the BMC will be working on is a recycled water beneficial use evaluation. This will be a study to document and characterize all the constraints as well as opportunities to put this recycled water resource that we have from the Los Osos water recycling facility to the most beneficial use for the community. As I mentioned earlier, the community of Los Osos solely relies upon groundwater. And so anything we can do with this recycled water to improve sustainability, we want to be able to do. And this study will help us make sure that we are making the best use of that resource. Additionally included is a funding and organizational study. The BMC currently has what it characterizes as somewhat an informal funding structure. And it doesn't necessarily, the BMC doesn't exist as a legal entity, doesn't have an ability to raise funds on its own. And so there will be some analysis done looking at different funding and or organizational structures available to the BMC and to be able to better implement the basin plan. Just another initiative is an implementation and initiative evaluation. This is just, it would likely be kind of a feasibility study, high level engineering study looking at different infrastructure projects available to improve the sustainability of the basin. And then finally, something I'm kind of excited about, it's a potential geophysics investigation. For those of you that may not be aware, I mean, most, if not all of our information about the groundwater basin comes from the few holes or wells that we have poked into the basin. That's how we collect our geologic information and our understanding of the aquifer properties. That's also how we collect our water quality information. And so it can be somewhat discrete, and we can only collect information at locations where we have wells. A geophysics investigation allows us to use electromagnetic and other technologies to collect a broader swath of information on what's going on under the ground. And it could present some exciting opportunities for Los Osos. And then finally, just kind of an overview of where the BMC is at with the annual report. It was released on April 30th for public and BMC review. At our May 19th meeting, we reviewed the 2020 annual report and received public comment on the 2020 annual report. At the June 16th BMC meeting, the Basin Management Committee will be reviewing and considering for approval the final 2020 annual report, and then that report will be submitted to the court at the end of June. And that concludes my presentation.
All right, thanks, Daniel. And do we have any questions from any board members? All right, Trish?
I had a question on slide 2. You talked about the community facilities for producing the water. What exactly is that?
Okay, slide 2. Let me share my screen again here, just so I make sure I. So is this the slide you were referring to?
No, try slide 3 then. The one that you had that had Golden State, go down one more. It would be slide 5.
Yes, community facilities.
Yeah, I didn't understand what that was.
We lost the slide.
Yeah. Let me track that down. Maybe if are there any other questions? We can ask those while I track down the answer to the community facilities.
Okay, Sue, you had a question?
Yeah. Oh, did he answer Trish's?
He's
later.
looking for the slide.
Later, cool. Okay, well, Dan, I'd like to ask you, you mentioned the production numbers in 2020 as being, I don't know, 1900 or 2010. I'm not 2010. I'm not really sure. I got that a little bit. But if that's the production number, I'd like to know how much water actually goes into the basin every year when we're pulling out 2,000 some odd a square acre feet or whatever it is. How much water is going in, or how much are we restoring the water in the basin compared to what we take out?
Yeah, so unfortunately, I don't have the answer to that question, but it's something that we could obtain. I know that Cleith Harris geologist who prepares the annual report does an evaluation of change in storage. And so that is one component that could help answer that. But in terms of the total amount of water that goes into the basin, I don't know that that's quantified, but I can look in the annual report and try to find that information. In response to the first question, my understanding is that the community facilities, it represents Memorial Park, Sea Pines Golf Course, and the community park. Water used for those facilities.
Okay, thank you.
And we have another question.
James,
Yeah.
James
Oh, sorry.
Bishop has a question.
Sue had a question.
Thank you. I have another question. You showed one slide that had the predicted increase in chloride and then a large decline. And then you had and on that same, you predicted that the water would eventually increase in the basin, and you showed the line going way up. How did you decide that that was going to happen? Why are you predicting that the chloride's going to go way down and the water level is going to come way up?
Yeah, let me pull up the presentation again so we can be, I guess, would that be desired to have the presentation up?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
That works visually.
Yeah, so I believe you're referring to this slide. Yeah, so the prediction was that the chloride metric would increase for a period of time, but then would decline. And then additionally, the water level metric would be increasing. And then once it leveled off, then the chloride would start to decline. That is anticipated to happen as the Broderson Mound forms. So, I mean, as this community knows, when we transitioned off septic tanks and all the water was recharged, evenly distributed throughout the community into the upper aquifer. Now we, with the water recycling facility, a majority of the water that goes to that facility is treated, nitrates are removed, it's brought back, and it's disposed of at the Broderson leach field. And the intent is to create a mound of water there at Broderson in the upper aquifer. Once a sufficient hydraulic pressure is reached, that water will push through to the lower aquifer, and then that additional pressure will help prevent and or push back the seawater intrusion front in the lower aquifer. And so that, I believe, is what this is, that is what this is representing, the increased pressure in the lower aquifer. Once it reaches a sufficient pressure, then it starts to push back that intruding seawater in front, and we see the associated decline in chloride concentrations in the chloride metric wells.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions from board members? Sandra, do you see who has their hand up? See, I think we have James Bishop. That's what I see on mine. I'm going to unmute you. James, how you doing?
He's still muted.
Still muted.
No,
All right,
there
we
you
got
go.
I'm doing well. Thank you.
oh, hey, James.
Dan, I had a question about the geophysics that you were talking about. I know the Department of Water Resources is doing aerial geophysics on many of the basins in the state. Is the effort that you were talking about in coordination with DWR? And if not, it might be a good idea to touch base with them and see if, you know, they're going to fly the San Luis Basin, see if they'd fly Los Osos while they're at it.
Yes, James, and I agree. Unfortunately, the geophysics that I'm talking about is not the aerial geophysics, you know, that is planned for the San Luis Basin. The geophysics that's being discussed is partnering with Cal Poly and one of the physics professors there to do land-based or ERT geophysics, which it will be valuable, but won't allow us to cover as much area as you know, James, as the aerial. We've reached out to DWR about the potential to partner with them. And as you know, given that they will be in the close proximity, I'm not overly optimistic that we're going to be successful. You know, the initial response was, well, hey, there's going to be a public webinar. You can check it out there. But maybe, you know, with the right influences, we could come up with an opportunity to partner with them and collect some additional geophysics data that really would be informative in terms of the extent of the seawater intrusion interface here in Los Osos.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. And that Cal Poly geophysics should be really interesting. So, and maybe I can see if the regional board would submit a recommendation letter to DWR on to fly Los Osos while they're doing San Luis.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, but we can partner up on that.
Yeah, perfect.
We have another question here from Charlie.
Yeah, I
May
just
I ask
asked
you to
him to unmute. Charlie, you should be able to unmute now.
Yes, my name is Charlie Cody, and I'm the certified system operator at S&T Mutual Water Company. I'd like to thank Dan for taking time out of his off time to come and give that nice presentation today. And I have some comments here that I've discussed with Dan in the past, and I'd like to ask him if he can verify these comments as being true. And it has my comments have to do with septic pollution that's still being released into the upper aquifers of the Los Osos Basin by what the Regional Water Quality Control Board calls permitted high density septic systems. And you can reference this in the SLO local area management plan for on-site waste treatment systems, section 6C, that there are 3 areas over the Los Osos Basin that the Regional Water Board deems to have a severe impact on water quality in the Los Osos Basin aquifers. And of course, this is in the upper aquifers. The focus area A is the Cabrillo Estates area. Focus area C is the Bayview Heights area. Focus area J is loosely called the Vista del Moro area, which is the east of South Bay Boulevard and north of LOVR. And these upper area aquifer areas of the Los Osos water basin have been severely impacted by nitrate pollution, as Dan has indicated in his summary of the annual report. The majority of the upper aquifer community wells can no longer produce potable water, as Dan said, and this pollution in the upper aquifer has been found by the Basin Management Committee to be leaking down through the clay layer called the regional aquitard into the lower aquifers, areas C and D, which we had considered to be in the recent past to be pristine areas of essentially fossil water. But now there are some instances of those areas, some areas of those lower aquifer freshwaters being polluted with nitrate to the extent that we have 5 wells, lower aquifer wells, community wells in the lower aquifer, which are either too polluted to use because the nitrate levels have exceeded the maximum contaminant limit allowed by the state of California, or they will soon, within the next 10 to 20 years, become unusable. Those wells are LA5, LA8, LA9, LA22, 17E11, LA15, and LA10. 2 of these wells that I mentioned are S&T, lower aquifer wells, which are rendering the S&T water sources to be unsustainable. And so when we talk about the water basin, the Los Osos water basin, and we wonder if there's any water left, is there enough water left? There's a lot of water, but a lot of it's not usable. And at S&T Mutual Water Company, this water is becoming so polluted with nitrate that within 10 years, we need a water source that we don't have right now. And I'd just like to ask Dan, perhaps if he agrees with this evaluation.
Yes, I think, Charlie, the contamination of the lower aquifer from upper aquifer nitrates has been documented, and there's actually a very well-written report about that the BMC's hydrogeologist prepared on November 6th of 2019, called the Lower Aquifer Nitrate Concentration Trends Review and LA11 Seawater Intrusion Evaluation. That is definitely a concern, that the nitrates are not staying in the upper aquifer, that they are migrating down to the lower aquifer, both through borehole leakage, but also through penetration of the regional aquitards. And that is something that, hopefully we will see improvements in the upper aquifer nitrate concentrations with the water recycling facility, but those likely will be somewhat localized, in and around the Broaderson area, and it may be some time before we see improvements in other areas. And so, yeah, it's an important that we continue to track the nitrate concentrations in the lower aquifer, as that has the potential to render that portion of the aquifer undrinkable due to nitrate contamination. And there are a variety of things that can be done. 2 of the purveyors in Los Osos currently have nitrate treatment systems that they utilize to treat upper aquifer water to remove nitrates, and then they can provide that to the community. There are opportunities to blend upper and lower aquifer water to reduce the nitrate concentrations. Or there are external sources of water that could be pursued to blend or offset other concentrations. And then obviously there's the source of the nitrates as well. Investigations with respect to the source of the nitrates in the different portions of the aquifer.
All right, thanks, Daniel, and thanks, Charlie, for the question
Then we had
and
Keith.
statements. Do we have Sandra?
Yeah, we have Keith. You should be able to unmute now, and then Eve.
Thank you.
And then Larry.
My name is Keith Weimer. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
we can hear you. How you doing?
Okay, great. Thanks. Thanks, Dan, for the presentation. My name again, Keith Weimer. I'm from the Sustainability Group. Could we look at the metric graph you were just showing that had the dotted lines as well as the solid lines?
Yes, can you see that?
Yes. Yeah, the point I'd like to make here is that you can see that the blue line, which started up, let's say, if you could pick a spot about even with 2015 when the Basin Management Committee got underway, it has gone up just a little ways, and it's actually 1.8 feet, and then it's leveled off. In the basin plan, it estimated that it would reach this level at the top up here within 10 years. So we can see that trajectory, that trend is definitely way below what's expected. And you can also see from the steeply rising red line that on that trajectory, the chloride metric would far exceed just that peak of the dotted line. So my point here is that we are definitely not on track. We're a long ways off because we spent 6 years getting to 2 feet, and it was supposed to be 10 years to get to a full 8 feet. So we're way off there, and it has to be, the water levels have to precede the chloride levels. So very slow on the water levels and likely a long time to get there. The other thing I wanted to point out, if you show me the overhead map for just where seawater intrusion is. Yes, so you see the green and the blue lines, and the kind of the purpley blue line is where it is for this year, estimated for this year. Dan indicated that that was localized, but you know there's only one chloride well, and that's the LA10. So we're not sure exactly where that seawater intrusion is, and it could go further, it could go farther in one direction or another. The other point I'll make is this purple line up here, where it was in 2016, was an estimate, but it was an estimate before that LA 40 and 41. You see where the 52 is. That's before that well went in. So when that well went in and chlorides look less, that line, the shape of that line changed. But I just wanted to point out that it's not like current conditions are a lot better. It's just that we have a little bit more data. And then I want to point out with the red line that there are not enough wells, and the consultant has said this, that he recommends 3 more wells are developed or reconditioned so that they can accurately measure this seawater intrusion in Zone E. And that's the worst seawater intrusion. And because of the lack of wells, for instance, to the south, we're not certain where that seawater intrusion may be. It may be further inland or wider than shown here. And it is active. I mean, see where the 52 is, where it says LA 40 and LA 41? I lost it there. So where I was mentioning where that new well is, where it says the 52 up on top there. Well, at LA 40, in the deep aquifer, the one that's represented by the red line, that chloride level is not 52, but it exceeds the seawater intrusion level by many times. It's about 2,200 and rising milligrams per liter. And just one more thing I wanted to point out is if we can go just to the status of basin infrastructure programs. Chuck and Dan were pointing out that there are a couple of projects that are due to come online, but just a general comment that the sustainability group had and that we observed is that, you know, in 6 years, there's only been one infrastructure well that's completed. And yet, based on just that one well and on the model, there was a TM a while back when the chloride metric looked really good. There was a TM that said, well, we can raise the sustainable yield by 400 or 500 acre feet. I think it went from 2,400 acre feet to actually about 2,760, so about 360 acre feet. So that's a big raise in the sustainable yield, and that was just based on modeling because the metrics changed. The metrics actually got worse after that. And yet, if we can go down to, I think it's the next page down on this, Dan. If you see expansion well number 3 down here in the left-hand column, but if you look over in the right-hand column, that's been deferred. So that was originally supposed to be something that helped sustain the current population, but based on modeling and a temporary blip in the metric, that sustainable yield was estimated to be much higher than where it started out. And now there's a recommendation, or there was a recommendation, that hasn't been changed, that we don't even need that well. And we're saying, no, all the conservation possible needs to be implemented. All the, all the infrastructure programs until there's conclusive evidence of a sustainable water supply for the current population. And with the seawater intrusion happening, there's obviously not conclusive evidence of a sustainable water supply. And I know I'm kind of taking up a lot of time here, but I think if you look back at those production numbers, you'll find out too that the reduction in water use is not due to conservation since the Basin Management Committee took over. Let's go back to those, number 5. Right, so if you look in the bottom box and you look in the left-hand, not quite the left-hand column, but the first one where it says purveyors there, you look at 2015, when we started out with the Basin Management Committee, the production then was 107. If you look now, it's, 1,007. And if you look at it now, it's 1,063. So production has actually gone up. There is no long-term conservation benefits that are observable by that data. Of course, over in the right-hand column, you see kind of a big drop from 2016 to 2020. But if you look at where those drops are, one is in community. Community doesn't have any metered wells. Another's in agriculture. They don't have any metered wells. So those reductions are not from conservation. They're from a recalculation and a reevaluation of how you figure that estimate. And it's based on soil moisture and a lot of formulas that the sustainability group has pointed out have some very suspect and probably exaggerated assumptions that go along with them. And we'll provide more information on that, but I better let somebody else talk. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Keith. We had Eve next, and then Larry had something to say, and then Lisa, Larry Bender. So Eve, Larry Bender,
Thanks,
then Lisa
Sandra.
Danker.
I realized I was on mute.
Okay. All right, Eve, you should be able to unmute. Whoops.
Here I am.
All right,
Hi.
Eve, we can hear you.
Good evening. I'm Eve Grunfest, and I really appreciate these discussions. And I want to thank the Los Osos Sustainability Group for their diligent review of the engineering and the scientific reports. And I'm really encouraging the Los Osos Community Advisory Council to listen to the update from and carefully consider the annual report. I also want to thank the water purveyors, Golden State, S&T Water, and the CSD, who've expressed grave concern about the viability of the groundwater for the current Los Osos residents. And I really want to reiterate what's already been said, which is as long as the hundreds or maybe even thousands of Los Osos residents who live in Bayview Heights, Cabrillo Estates, Vista del Oro, and the other numerous neighborhoods that are not connected to the wastewater treatment plant continue to depend on their septic tanks, their residences will contribute to more dangerous nitrates to our precious communal groundwater. I also want to mention the Coastal Commission staff report from March 2021 that rejected SLO County's approval of the accessory dwelling unit that was an appeal from the Los Osos Sustainability Group. And the Coastal Commission was very clear on page 10 that septic use in Los Osos has resulted in severe nitrogen loading and groundwater degradation over time. So as nice as it was to hear Daniel be hopeful and say hopefully, which of course didn't inspire confidence to me about the future, and to show these nice graphs, the annual report from 2020 clearly shows that nitrate contamination continues to increase and that seawater intrusion is worsening. I'm also very concerned that no one's mentioned the drought that may be the ongoing drought. We may not have any more years of what we used to consider average rainfall. So I just want to close by saying that the Basin Management Committee and Locac must resist pressure from SLO County to move forward before the current deterioration of our basin is halted, and the current 15,000 residents of Los Osos must be assured that their water is, our water supply is safe and sustainable. Thank you.
Okay, Sandra, who's next? Cecile?
Did we, I had forgotten to offer Dan time to respond to anything from Keith or Eve. Just speak up if you want to respond, Dan. Otherwise, we'll go on to Larry Bender from our council. I know you'd had your...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to make the comment that I'm concerned about our water supply. They keep talking, one, with all our conservation efforts, they're talking about moving wells, you know, drilling a new well here and, you know, but that still doesn't, it's still coming out of the same basin. So, you know, yes, you can make the numbers by the bay look better, you know, and lower the salt numbers, but it's still water coming out of the same basin. And according to our new census report, there, instead of 14,000 people living in Los Osos, there's now 16,000. So we've increased our population. We've conserved water, which is really good. There is question about some new houses going up here and there. And I just want to make a comment. I'm concerned about this. So thank you very much. Otherwise, it's a great report you guys did. Thank you.
Yeah, this is Dan. I can respond. Yeah, having one source of supply is a dangerous position to be in. The county's working on a regional water infrastructure resiliency study that I think is going to come out later this summer. And one of the key criteria that was included in that study was the diversity of the individual water purveyors' water supply portfolios as an indicator of how resilient or alternatively at risk they are. And so I would agree with Larry's statement that, yeah, it is challenging that there is only one source of water and that's completely reliant upon local rainfall in Los Osos.
Okay, I'm gonna just name off who I have on the list to speak so you all know you're gonna have your turn. I have Lisa Danker, Cecile, Larry, Deborah, and then Lindy. So I do see your hand raised and you will be called on. Okay, Lisa, I'm gonna unmute you, or ask, you should be able to unmute. Lisa, can you unmute?
Yes.
There you go. Okay.
Good evening. Thanks for the presentation. I have too many questions, so I edited, and I'll just present a couple questions, Daniel. I'd love to hear what you have to say about them. The first one is, I mean, that one chart that shows the various amount of seawater intrusion is pretty startling, and it makes me wonder about the methodology of well injection, because you said that that is a method that's commonly used to hold back salt water intrusion. Are we doing enough of this in Los Osos? That's my first question. And what would it take to do more if we need to do more? And the second question is, how does the BMC narrative and numeric analysis in your report relate to the proposed Los Osos community plan? Does it support the proposed build out? Thank you.
Yeah, good questions. With respect to the first question, so the majority of the water from the water recycling facility, or the Los Osos wastewater plant, is being delivered to Brodesson and used to recharge the groundwater basin. A portion of that water is being delivered to Bay Ridge and the disposal site there. And then also there's a portion that is delivered to Sea Pines that's being utilized for landscape irrigation. With respect to injection, the challenge is, and I think you heard me describe it, is putting the water in Brodesson takes time. It needs to mound in the upper aquifer and create enough pressure to push down to the lower aquifer, where then it can really start to have the desired benefit or effect of pushing back the seawater intrusion front and lowering the chloride concentrations. A more efficient or effective approach could be to inject that water directly into the portions of the aquifer that we're trying to influence or target. The challenge with that is that, you know, with my understanding is that the current regulations within California for what gets termed indirect potable reuse don't allow for the injection of the quality of wastewater that we have from the water recycling facility. And to be able to utilize injection wells and target the lower aquifer directly would require a reverse osmosis treatment system or upgrade to be established or included at the water recycling facility. And that comes with its whole own set of problems, and it's very energy intensive. But even more challenging is the concentrate, or you know, for lack of a better term, the brine stream, waste disposal stream that's generated. And without anywhere to put that brine, the only really viable option would be to truck it, and that is a very expensive and also a challenging thing in itself, because then you have to still find somewhere to put that brine. So that, hopefully that answers the question about well injection. The other question about build out, the basin plan includes, you know, two programs that I think were described earlier, you know, and are envisioned, you know, two programs, A and C, that are currently underway and at some form, you know, some state of progress towards implementation. That are, you know, the narrative has been those are for existing users and intended to ensure sustainability for the existing users. Programs B and D are additional programs designed to enhance the sustainable yield in the basin and increase the sustainable yield to, and I believe, and with the intent of accommodating additional growth. I don't know exactly how the current estimates of sustainable yield within those programs aligns with the community plan specifically. So I can't answer that question in any more detail, unfortunately.
All right, thank you.
Okay,
And who do we have next, Sandra?
We have Cecile, then Larry, then Deborah, then Lindy, then Patrick. Okay, Cecile, you should be able to speak.
Yeah, I had a question for Dan. In the Basin Management Plan, section 2.4, immediate goals, goal 2 is to provide a sustainable water supply to the current water users. Has that happened?
The Basin Management Committee is tracking and monitoring the status of the nitrate contamination and the seawater intrusion front. The Basin Management Committee is continuing to look for opportunities to improve its monitoring program, as well as the metrics that it utilizes to track the sustainability of the basin. A number of the initiatives that I described earlier will improve the BMC's understanding of basin conditions, along with the new monitoring well will help. One thing that was brought up at our last Basin Management Committee is an initiative to hopefully develop what we call a transient model, groundwater model, but the reality is it would be an improved tool set to allow us to evaluate future conditions and to evaluate what the basin may look like in 20 to 30 years given current or future demands and current and or anticipated changes in hydrology. And so yes, the BMC's goal is to ensure sustainability and implement the basin plan, and that is what the BMC is working towards.
Great, thank you. And who do we have next, Sandra?
We have Larry Rayo, or Larry Rayo. There you go.
Hi, Dan. Thanks for your presentation. It was very informative. I'd like to kind of talk about the, if you could go to the slide on basin status summary and look at that real quick.
This slide?
Yeah,
Okay.
I kind of, I'm not sure everybody understands, we're trying to stay at this basin yield metric of 80 or less. And it looks this year, it did deteriorate from 69 to 73. But those numbers are questionable to begin with. And basically what that metric is the sustainable yield, which for these numbers, we're using 2760, which Keith mentioned was kind of based on a modeling improvement, but not on hard data. And the way I understand it, it wasn't even voted on through the BMC, which was required. We should be more around the 2400. So if you reduce that number, these basin yield metrics go up dramatically. And the other number, the one on top, is your production. And if you could go to the slide on basin production and look at that, we're seeing that production did go up a little bit, but we're kind of looking at, we really haven't saved any water over the last 5 years. Production's about the same or has even gone up. So it seems like all that conservation that many people in Los Osos has done, we've changed out water saving devices and, changed washers and did all this conservation. I think it's been eaten up by the increase in population that Larry Bender was talking about. And so this Title 19, is questionable as to whether it's really working. Are we really saving water with that? But I'd also like to kind of point out the agricultural use. You'll notice, in 2014, 15, 16, where we were at 800, and that number was just an estimate that the county came up with and did some aerial surveys. And I got digging into the numbers closely, and they're very questionable. They were saying that these agricultural production numbers, the irrigation systems that they were using was at like 92% efficiency. And that's just not the case. Most, agricultural efficiencies are more between 50% and 85% at best. With drip irrigation, you're at 85, but they use 92%, which is for all of the agricultural production. And that would push that 800. I mean, I don't even know why we changed from 800 to 650 and 630 and these other numbers, but I'm thinking that that number should be higher than 800 and up to like 2,000. And if you look at those two numbers, we're not even close to 80%. We're more at like 90% or even 100% of the yield metric. So I just think that some of these numbers, are more idealized than actual reality of measure, because we don't have, none of the agricultural wells are metered, and how can we really know what's happening out there without them being metered? Or at least we shouldn't be using the best case scenarios for these numbers, because it's making it look like things are a little bit more rosy, I think, than they may be. And the fact that we still have seawater intrusion coming in, it makes you think, okay, where are the numbers wrong? Because if what we're doing is supposed to reverse seawater intrusion, but it's still coming in, some of our numbers must be wrong. So we need to sort of look at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Pat, yeah, go ahead, Daniel.
Sorry, just quick response. And that is something that the BMC will be doing. I think I mentioned earlier, they will be evaluating the basin yield number this year, both because it's required by the court, but also because it's a good thing to do, is to develop a plan, and then track data based on that plan and assess and see how you're doing relative to that plan. And then the ag irrigation question, I can't answer that specifically, but I can acknowledge or state that there will be a response with respect to the assumptions that go into ag irrigation at the June BMC meeting.
Great.
Excellent. That'd be great.
Okay.
Thanks.
And then we had Deborah Howe, and then Lindy Owen, and then Patrick. So Deborah, I'm going to unmute you, or ask to unmute you.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Daniel. Very interesting report. I have a quick question regarding the basin metrics. Obviously, the intention is to measure the health of the basin, and target values were established to encourage us to have a healthy basin. But what do these target values really mean in terms of how they relate to our water resource for our existing community? Does it mean that we could actually see growth if we meet these target values? Could we lift the prohibition on building in the probation zone if we meet these target values? What do they really mean in terms of our, how we use our water?
Yeah, I think achieving these target values, or I guess it's probably a better slide, would be an indicator of gaining ground on the seawater intrusion front. So they would be, and so, hitting those target values is also an indicator that the plan that was established within the basin plan of creating the Broderson Mound and pushing water to the lower aquifer has been achieved. Now, what that translates to exactly in terms of sustainable yield, I don't know that answer, but I mean, that would be the metric that the BMC and others would be, I think, looking to, the basin yield metric and the sustainable yield estimates for assessing water availability.
So the target values don't necessarily correlate with how we use our water. It's basically a number that's been established based on what?
The target, well, my understanding, and granted, I wasn't one of the, I wasn't involved in the development of the basin plan. It was before my tenure with the BMC, but that is an indicator that the plan that was established in the basin plan, both to relocate the discharge of the wastewater and it has been achieved. We've achieved the anticipated water levels that would create that protective barrier from seawater intrusion. Then we had seen a corresponding reduction in the chloride concentration. Now, that plan acknowledged that this wouldn't happen overnight, that this was going to take time as that Broderson Mound was built. And that's what these dashed lines are indicating on the graph I'm showing here, that it is going to take time for that plan to play out. And so what we're doing now is we're gathering the best available information that we can, that the mound is building and the plan is developing as anticipated.
And is this plan, the metrics that are being used here, similar to other plans and metrics that are used in areas that are not adjudicated, like Los Osos?
All basins have very different characteristics. I would say that this is a plan very unique to Los Osos, but Los Osos has a very unique set of circumstances that required a specific plan. I just sort of at a higher level, I would say that, the focus at Los Osos is on seawater intrusion, and that is a problem for many coastal basins. And so I would say it is a metric consistent with my understanding with how water resources are tracked and managed in other coastal basins. On the flip side, I would say, no, it's not consistent with, inland basins, Paso Basin, Slow Basin, for example, that don't have a threat of seawater intrusion.
Okay, thank you, Daniel, very much.
Cassandra, who is next?
Lindy.
Hi, good evening, Dan. Really good presentation as usual. I like the graphics are helpful, but I just get more and more disturbed looking at some of this and wanted to, again, is it true that you can push the ocean back out by putting some water into the front that's freshwater, seawater? That's one I'll just ask because it doesn't seem possible. A lot of the water that is being recycled was meant to go back into the ground, and it's not. It's going into one area that's not necessarily getting into the aquifer that we need. So my question is, will you be considering what was originally requested from the Coastal Commission, which was to offset the agricultural use? And that's just not happening. The cemetery is not using that water either, as far as I know. So we are not offsetting the water that we pull out with, which was the original plan. The idea that the ag wells and private wells are not metered, I think is pretty serious and has been from the very get-go. They should have gotten a metering program set up because each one of those properties is allowed to use any amount of water that they would like to take out. That is their water. there's no way to, control or charge them for excess water use. So that is just disturbing that we don't even have a control over what to see in the future. And it's true, this drought is what is our main supplier of water to our basin. And we're not getting the water that we normally use. I go back to thinking it's a basin. We've got seawater intrusion coming from the west. And so you're going to go put straws on the other side. And is that really going to solve a problem? It's going to slow down saltwater intrusion. So some of what's showing up in these reports and pointed out by, I think Charlie made a good point of the nitrate increase. We should not be seeing nitrates going into our basin. We're all, supporting a sewer project that took that away. And those people should be contributing. I would hope that comes forward and there's something with the regional board to request that they sign on in the next 5 years or something, because they're polluting our basin at this point. And then I'm probably making comments, but I do have a lot of questions about how you see I don't know, between nitrates and saltwater intrusion. I think we're a basin in crisis. I appreciate the water purveyors beginning to feel that way too. I'm disappointed that the county continues looking at growth because that's what they want out of this basin. But those of us that live here, I think, really appreciate that all this data and sustainability groups work being looked at as a serious reason for just stopping growth, possibly putting a water moratorium on. I don't think any of us appreciate that people outside the prohibition zone get to build, and we're all limited to nothing. So I would urge that we come back and answer that question. Will new development really help our basin become more sustainable? So those are my comments and a couple questions. Thank you for the presentation, though.
I just want to, there was a lot there. I did want to respond to one of maybe two of them. The one, I have seen evidence of basins being able to push back seawater intrusion. An example of that is in the Santa Maria Basin in the vicinity of Pismo, Arroyo Grande, Oceano. They detected seawater intrusion in 2009, and they, through a series of actions that they took, one was water conservation, two was increased delivery of their surface water supplies, back to the concept of a diversified water supply portfolio. They were able to significantly reduce their groundwater pumping, which allowed the groundwater levels to recover to gain sufficient pressure to push the seawater intrusion front back offshore. And so if you can, it's all about physics. If you can get the right pressures in the right places, you can, just as it moves in onshore, it will move offshore. And then I guess there was a comment that how with the septic tanks that was the water where it was supposed to go into the ground. I guess I would just say, I'm not sure that was intentional. That's just what we had was septic tanks, and that's where the water went. With the water recycling facility and the Broderson Mound, we have the ability to better target where we put that water to ideally put it somewhere where it does the most beneficial use.
All right, thanks, Daniel. Sandra, do we have any other questions?
Yeah, we have Patrick.
Okay, Patrick.
Thank you very much, Dan. I really appreciate your presentation. I've got a few just quick questions here. In dealing with seawater intrusion and the high nitrates found in the upper aquifer, the Basin Management Plan says in its introduction that it is vitally, and this is a quote, "It is vital that bold, decisive, and immediate actions be taken to solve these twin challenges and protect our basin." So what are the actions that have been taken by the BMC? That's one question. Another question real quickly is that looking at all your graphs and everything and your metrics that are being used, you did mention that it is going to take time before we know whether these metrics are actually correct and have worked. So wouldn't it be prudent in that time that we are waiting to see if they are actually working, that we do not have any more increase in our population and using more water? So that was that last question. And the last thing I want to ask you is, what is Plan B? We have a basin that after 6 years of management and 40 years of seawater intrusion, not much has changed. The Estero Area Plan talks about the need for an outside water source for build out. Supervisor Gibson talks about an outside water source, and the basin plan also mentions outside water sources, though it does say that that's not the preferable or a reasonable option. So knowing that the world is warming and that the most meteorologists are saying that this drought we're in is not part of a cycle, but is the future norm with warmer and drier winters, and that state water is not a feasible solution. This year it has cut back its contractual obligations to 5%. And that's only what the future holds in front of us. And lastly, desal is way too expensive and polluting. With so many environmental questions, it's doubtful that could be an option. So the question is, if we lose our basin due to overdraft and increased seawater intrusion, what is our Plan B? Thank you.
Yeah, I think we talked earlier about the challenge of having one source of supply and the vulnerability that places on the community. The programs within the basin plan look to maximize the sustainability of that supply by shifting pumping to different portions, either upper or lower, or to the east or central. But they still rely upon that single source of water. Plan B, one option could be a diversified water supply portfolio and a increased and access to another source of supply that could be utilized to allow the basin to rest. And state water is, obviously one of probably the closest options given the proximity of the state water pipeline in the Choro Valley and Morro Bay. Granted, state water supplies are variable, but I think the reality that we're going to need to face as a community and as a state and as others is that rainfall is going to be more variable, and we're going to have longer periods of dry, and we're going to have wetter, shorter periods of wet. And so we need to develop strategies to be able to survive in this changing climate. And so water resource managers across the state are looking at what are the strategies to adapt to these changing conditions. And, there's an analogy that I heard that I thought that it made sense. They called it big gulp, little sip. And it's take advantage and capture the water when the water is available during these highly variable wet years and store that water. And where can you store that water? Into the groundwater basin is one of our biggest opportunities for storing water. Additional surface water storage is really not very viable. And then rely upon that storage during the extended drought periods. And so it's the concept of conjunctive use. And that is a potential strategy that could be viable as an alternative to the basin plan program opportunities.
Great, thanks, Daniel.
We had one more person raise their hand.
We have Jeff Edwards.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. My name is Jeff Edwards, and I'm so glad that the state water project was brought up, because if you believe all of the comments that were made tonight, I would think our community would want to begin tomorrow to establish this quote Plan B by way of subscribing to the State Water Project. And while the deliveries this year are very low, I can tell you over the life of the project, deliveries to our county have been right at 60%. As a county, we have an unallocated amount of 15,000 acre feet of state water. So there is a pipeline in Chorro Valley that goes to Morro Bay. It's about a 4-mile extension to Los Osos. We could have all the water we need. I think that's the answer. I think we need to start on it tomorrow, and I'd hope that Locac is an advocate for subscribing to state water. The timing couldn't be better. Right now, our county, the Flood Control and Water Conservation District, is working with the State Department of Water Resources and Santa Barbara County Central Coast Water Authority to analyze the prospects of how to utilize this unallocated entitlement. So now's the time, since it appears, if you believe that our basin is in trouble, this is the time. Let's go for state water. It will ensure we have a secondary source. Our portfolio of water will be diversified. The cost for a 4-mile pipeline is probably around $8 million. Throw a couple more million in for environmental and permits. $10 million will get us state water. Let's start tomorrow. Thank you.
Jeff. All right, thank you, Daniel, for the presentation. And I appreciate all your answering questions to the public.
Do it.
No problem. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
All right.
You didn't answer my other questions, though.
All right, so on to the second regular agenda item, which is the proposed bridge replacement project at South Bay Boulevard. Is Kid Immel still with us this evening?
What's the name? Sorry.
Kid Immel? Am I saying the last name correctly?
Yes. Okay. Yep. You should be able to unmute now.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hi.
Yes, thank you.
All right, great. Thanks for having me tonight. So I'm with County Public Works, and the Deputy Director of Public Works would like to speak first. So he's on here. If you could unmute him. His name is John Waddell.
All right, we'll get him unmuted.
Yeah, you should be able to unmute.
Okay. Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for having us. So I'm John Waddell. I think my computer was having some issues. Hold on a second. I'm having to use my phone. But yeah, I was with you last month.
Yeah.
To talk about the circulation study. And so I want to introduce Kid. He's our project manager and bridge engineer for Public Works. And then we also have Monica Stillman, environmental specialist, and Keith Miller, who's our environmental division manager, available too. And so Kid's going to give an overview of the project. We're going into the environmental CEQA phase, and I wanted to give an update on that, and then we'll be available for questions. So thank you. I'll turn it back over to Kid.
All right. So John mentioned I'm the current project manager for this bridge, and I have a little presentation to do. I'll try and keep it a little bit shorter, hopefully, than the last one. It's just pretty late. I'm not used to this late of presentations. So let's see if I can share my screen here. Okay, so I assume everybody can see the screen now.
Yes, sir.
Start from first slide. So this is the South Bay Boulevard Bridge that's just north of town on the way to Morro Bay, the one with the bear on it over Los Osos Creek. So I assume everybody knows where this bridge is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm with the County Department of Public Works. So I'm going to talk briefly about why it's being replaced, which is seismic reasons. And then I'll talk a little bit about the existing bridge, and then go ahead and roll on into where what the new bridge is proposed. So the new bridge will probably, at the earliest it will be in, as construction would start, would be about 3 years from now. So it's a ways off. Currently, we're working through our environmental certifications. And this is a pretty big milestone because it allows us to actually commit to a design and begin working on utility relocations. It's very important. So that's me, Kit Immel. I'm a licensed surveyor and a licensed civil engineer. I've been with the county for 9 years now. I've been with the bridge program 7 years with the county. I've been doing highway bridge work since about 2002. This project is funded by the Federal Highway Administration. It's funded by the original gas tax that came into effect during the Eisenhower administration. That's the federal 18 cents a gallon. And it's administered by Caltrans. So it's a state, federal, local partnership, and it has a lot of oversight from these groups, a lot of specialty from Caltrans. Caltrans does a great job. Local assistance, also Caltrans headquarters been involved. So they pay 80 cents on the dollar for these projects. Currently, the transportation program is overprescribed, they call it. This is the first time in my experience that the transportation program has been overprescribed. So they're not authorizing any new construction projects at this point until they get caught up with a bunch of others. I don't foresee federal money from the stimulus package coming down to bridges such as this, or it will take a long time for that money to clear. It'll come with too many strings attached. So currently I don't see that as an option. So we're looking through the traditional federal highway bridge program, which is impacted too because the price of bridge construction has gone up double since the recession. So we're just not keeping up on this level. So this project was initiated in 2010. It's a seismic retrofit project. And in 2010, there was a study for evacuation for the Diablo power plant. So we ended up the county retrofitted the Avila Bridge just a couple years ago. And this was the other bridge that was identified in that PG&E report as a potential weak link. So the county sought to get this as what's called a voluntary seismic retrofit. So the county did engineering analysis on it until it could convince Caltrans that this bridge needed a seismic retrofit, and it really did. So this bridge was built in the 1960s, and I have tremendous respect for what engineers were able to do in the 1960s. They built a lot of our current infrastructure today. They knew a lot. We went to the moon in 1969. These people knew what they were doing generally. They didn't know two things. They didn't know about alkali silica reactive aggregate, and they didn't know about liquefaction during seismic events. So there were two things that they didn't know that we know now. So the first one is the main reason, which is the liquefaction. So this is the bridge here at the top, and then here's down below the bridge. And there's a layer of about 40 feet that will just turn to mush during an earthquake, and they call that liquefaction. And so it will no longer, that earth will no longer support these columns. It'll vibrate and it will collapse. So the Caltrans has a criteria for bridges to remain in place, which is called a no collapse criteria. So this bridge does not meet that criteria. Now, before there's too much worry about no collapse, the design earthquake that this is analyzed for is an earthquake that would occur on average every 1,000 years. So this is a major earthquake. They don't like to use the recurrence interval description because they don't feel that that represents the level of risk. So they call it a 5% in 50 years earthquake, which is a 1 in 20 chance every 50 years that this earthquake will occur, the design level earthquake. But it was clear at Caltrans headquarters, we took it up there, and of all the bridges that have been taken to the seismic strategy to Caltrans by the county, there were 3 of them. This was the most clearly one that had a potential for collapse. So the engineers are certain that this is a liquefiable condition, and so there is the potential for collapse during a major seismic event. Now, this bridge has to be replaced. It cannot be retrofitted because also that would be difficult just period to retrofit it. But what makes the lifespan very unpredictable is the reactive aggregate in it, which is some people call it concrete cancer, which is a way to call it, there's an aggregate in a rock in the concrete that will just decay, and it's kind of unsure when it will decay or how the salt waters, we can't have a reliable lifespan for this bridge is what it amounts to. We've solved those problems. We have aggregate tests nowadays where that does not occur. We add fly ash to the concrete. It prevents that from happening now. So this bridge had two flaws with it that they didn't know about in the 1960s, the liquefiable soil and the reactive aggregate. So it's a great bridge, and but it does need to be replaced. So in the interest of time, I'm going to go to the next slide. I could talk more about some other stuff, but I'm going to continue on here. So up top here is the existing bridge. And in the 1960s, they had a lot of ideas about also, like I said, they built a lot of the current nation's infrastructure. And what they did here ended up being really nice and a lot of foresight for us. They actually planned, when they built this bridge over Los Osos Creek here, they actually planned to build another bridge right here, upstream from it on the other side. And they formed all this soil and everything and made it so that there's space to put a bridge right here. They actually had plans for it to have a median and another bridge right here. So what this did is their foresight in the 1960s allowed us to have a place to put in a new bridge just upstream on the land side of the existing bridge. So the contractor, when it does go to construction in 3, 4, 5 years, as soon as funding comes through and the environmental process is completed, well, then the contractor can come in here and they can build this new bridge. It'll take them 2 years to do this. They will build the majority of the new bridge or all of the new bridge in the first year. And then the second year, they will come in and complete the roadway work and reroute the traffic to the new bridge and then take out the old bridge. So hopefully that made sense to everybody. They're going to build the new bridge, then they'll route the traffic to the new bridge, and the utilities that are on the old bridge will all be routed to the new bridge. And once all that's done, then they'll take out the old bridge and then reform the soil, replant everything, put the habitat all back to how it was, and it'll look a lot better here. And I think this, the speeds are still going to be the same, so it's still a heavily traveled route. So it just ended up working out really nicely what they had done at this location. Now, the new bridge will be 100 feet longer than the existing bridge. The old bridge was 200 feet long. The new bridge will be 300 feet long. So it's a substantially longer bridge. I really feel like Caltrans and FHWA really went far and above for this bridge because it is on the coast here and they recognize the uniqueness of this coast. So they really paid for a lot of what I would say extra for this bridge. So let me see, someone texted me here. Let me just take a quick look from the team here. Okay, so here is a cross section of the bridge so that we just get an idea of the size. So like I said, the new bridge is 100 feet longer and is 300 feet long as opposed to 200 feet long. Now the existing bridge has 2 traffic lanes and it has shoulders that are about 5 feet wide, the shoulder. So you have 2 traffic lanes down the middle. Hopefully everybody understands how this works. This is a cross section of the bridge. If you slice the bridge and at a point down it, like chopped it, this is what the old bridge would look like. So it has these 5-foot shoulders and 12-foot lanes. So the new bridge will have the 12-foot lanes, which is the typical lanes for high-speed vehicles at 55, I believe the speed limit out there. And then it will have these larger 8-foot shoulders to provide room for bicyclists. So, and to also, I believe that's what's out there on the shoulder is the 8-foot shoulder. So this is to match what's out there and give the bicyclists room. There's a 5-foot sidewalk which will be placed on the ocean side for viewing and other things. I was really surprised. I'm just going to put a little aside here. I was really surprised that the 5-foot sidewalk was approved by the Federal Highway Administration and Caltrans, because there is no sidewalk out there currently. It was able to be justified because of the future. The state of California has this coastal trail plan to have a trail that goes along the entire coast of California. So this additional width would allow for in future to potentially have that coastal trail be on the bridge. If at that time, whenever they get it there, I would expect it would probably be 20 to 60 years out before they would be having there's currently no coastal trail project proposed at this time anywhere near this bridge. But so FHWA will generally, if anything's 20 years off in the future, they just go, that's speculative. We don't have anything, that's on you. If it's increased traffic volumes, if it's whatever, if it's something for over 20 years, they usually say no, but they actually allowed this to be on here, which I thought was unique to this project, at least in my experience. But this will allow for additional room for a future multi-use path or whatever we're doing. You got to remember that far into the future, I'm not real clear where vehicles are going right now. I mean, they're really, the self-driving cars and everything are pretty amazing. So it'll be curious what it will be like then. One last thing, this is an interesting slide that I do want to point out this one thing where these piles, these will be caissons or shafts. They're just big cylinders that will go down about 80 feet into the ground, and they'll be 10-foot diameter. They're just big concrete shafts for this main central support. So this is a massive amount of concrete. So the bridge is about 30% wider than the existing bridge, the proposed bridge, and it's about 50% longer. So it comes out to be almost, it comes out to be just more than double the deck, the total area, surface, top area of the existing bridge. And it's definitely way more massive. Just these piles alone are probably more massive than this whole bridge. So it's pretty big structure. I expect this structure probably to be about 10 to 20 million when it's constructed. It's hard to say until we get anyways, it's hard to say at this point exactly where it's going to come out with bridge costs and a number of other things that I'm not going to too detailed. So ordinarily, I'm used to bridge projects on county bridges being somewhere about 2 to 3 million. This one's a little bit longer and everything, but there's all this unique stuff with it, and working in this very sensitive environment and all the other things that go with it are really going to drive up the cost on it. But it's a great project, and I really think Caltrans, FHWA, and the engineering consultant have been doing an excellent job on it. So here's a rendering photos of what the new bridge would look like as compared to the old bridge. So we see that this old bridge has 2 piers that are in the creek. The new bridge will have 1 pier just outside the creek, and it just spans over that. Then it has an equal span that just goes the same length. And we're also running a retaining wall at this end here to keep the footprint and fill away from the oaks on that side. So that retaining wall that you can see right here, that runs for, I forget, about 100 feet or more up along here. It runs to right about there, I think. And that keeps this from having to disturb this oaks and other things. So there's been just a lot of sensitivity to this whole area here, and it's actually a pretty beautiful bridge. I almost worry, this is just me talking now, I almost worry a little bit about that. This bridge looks very similar to the bridge at Moonstone. It's Moonstone Drive or Moonstone Beach at Cambria. If you look at that bridge, it would look very similar to this bridge. Sometimes I almost worry like you can overdo it with architectural treatment or other things in these kind of country environments. But I'm not so sure about this bridge because it's hard to see this bridge up even close. You got to get really far away before you even get to see it. So it doesn't have what they call viewing angles to the actual bridge itself. I think from an aesthetic standpoint, most people are going to be seeing this bridge just by driving on it. So they won't even know what's underneath. They're just going to see the road and then the bridge railing. So I think the bridge railing, the county is going to go with as see-through a railing as possible. Because the construction and the final design haven't occurred, we can't select the specific rail at this time because rails become obsolete as they do more testing, and that becomes a safety issue. They do actual full-scale tests of vehicles at different angles, different sized vehicles before they approve a rail. It costs a lot of money. And they're always coming up with a better way to test them. So a rail that may be available today to use will be deemed insufficient. And they usually try and replace them with similar looking models. But FHWA also and Caltrans have indicated that they're on board for paying for whatever will participate in an aesthetic nice rail. So the cost isn't an issue on the rail. The county is going to pick whichever one is going to be the most see-through and aesthetically pleasing at the time. That's where we're going, which will probably be a metal beam rail, transparent. So I'll just give that up there for a second without me talking. Okay. And so we're into the in summary. So the replacement is needed to meet the no collapse criteria. And like I said, this bridge needs to be replaced and we're working on it. And hopefully I'd like to get it in sooner, but the way that everything just kind of came together, it's not going to be for another 3-4 years. When we get closer to the actual construction time, there will be a harder push for public outreach, the school systems and all the various people that will be affected during construction. It's just 3-4 years out, people aren't going to be aware of this project. There is going to be some construction issues when you build big bridge projects like this. It is phenomenal the degree to which contractors are so much better at vehicles turning off, not making noise, not making dust, not doing this thing. But there's a lot of dirt, there's a lot of equipment, there's a lot of machinery involved, and there's going to be a lot of disturbance. And you can't build a $10 to $20 million bridge project without somebody being upset with something. So there is going to be some problems with that. I know there was we did receive a comment about the proposed staging area on Turry Road further south in town, and that we environmentally clear as much room for the contractor as possible, because the contractors are going to need room. We want to make it as easy on them as possible. But I really don't see that as being, it was kind of like, well, that's going to prevent access or other things. I think that site's just way too far away from the project for the contractor to be moving back and forth and in and out of there all the time. So I don't currently see that as a problem. I'm sure that we can address all the access issues when the final design comes up with the specifications. So construction is planned for 2024 at the earliest. Construction will last 2 years so that the road can remain open during construction. The public, the CEQA document, which is the California State Environmental Document, is going to be issued hopefully next month, but by early July, hopefully for sure, famous last words. But there will be a public review comment time for that. And that's our, that sets up the generalities of the project. I'm sure everyone that's involved with Locac knows what that is. This is a mitigative negative declaration document. And the county would like, if Locac has comments, the county would like Locac to respond to us in writing so that we could just incorporate those directly into the environmental document, the CEQA document, before issuing, before even putting it out for public comment. They could just go directly into that. And the project is a federally funded project with oversight administration by Caltrans. So we have lots of checks and balances on this project. It's a great opportunity that Caltrans does allow local agencies to execute and deliver projects like this. There are other states where the state just handles all the projects. So there's a certain local influence here, and that's also a good thing. So I'll go ahead and turn this over for questions, or I haven't received any texts if someone else wants to speak at Public Works. So I'm available to take questions. Also, if anybody does have questions after the meeting, they can just call Public Works and then ask for me. I'll be happy to talk about this bridge or even that bridge or any other bridges that you want to talk about. I probably have an answer, or can at least have some conversation about it. So feel free to give me a call at Public Works.
All right, thank you very much for your presentation. Sandra, do we have anybody with their hand up from Locac?
Yeah, Jim had his hand up.
Okay.
It's I saw preliminary information about the project. You were talking about a staging area at the end of Santa Isabel.
Oh yeah, that's correct. What did I say? Turry Road? Yeah, Santa Isabel. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, Santa Isabel. It's
not
getting
big
late.
enough for what you're trying to do, and it's much further away than Turry Road.
Well, I don't know. Whatever he has to work with, he's going to have county right of way to work with. It's up to him whether he wants to use it or not, or it's up to the contractor whether they want to use it or not. They're going to be hemmed in by county right of way and whatever issues, they're going to be hemmed in by county right of way. They're not going to be able to obstruct access. Yeah, I've cleared lots of right of ways that the contractor, environmentally, that the contractor is not used. For instance, on the Avila project, the one up on the west side over where the hotel is, I cleared that parking lot. Well, the county cleared that parking lot environmentally for the contractor to use. They didn't use it, but yeah, I agree. It may be too constrained. I haven't talked to a contractor about that area, but yeah, you're right. It may be too constrained for, maybe they'll park something there. I don't know what they're going to do. I agree. When I saw it there, it didn't look like there was enough right of way width to do anything and turn anything around.
No.
But I'm not certain what the purpose of that was. But I mean, space is space. So maybe he's going to park maybe the contractor park vehicles there. I don't know. Maybe they'll use it for something. Maybe they won't.
Okay, we also have Lindy, and then, oh no, sorry, we have Yael, then Lindy, Jean, and Lindy.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I was following what Jim was just talking about. I would just like to, since it's such a long project, 2 years, we would definitely appreciate if you do not have any staging area in town. We would not appreciate, the dirt and the sound and the inconvenience that huge trucks will create. So I don't know where you're going to do it, but please don't put it in town anywhere.
Well, I can't guarantee that they're not going to park vehicles there or store material there or anything. This is county right of way. This project is hemmed in on each side by state parkland, and state parkland you just can't touch. We have huge equipment going in to do those piles, massive cranes and other things. I mean, I need to clear as much space out for this contractor as possible. Just the fact that they can build something like this today is pretty amazing. So like I said, the contractor is going to have a lot of conditions put on in their contract where they're not going to have noise at certain times. They're not going to be able to make dust in town. That's for sure. They're not going to be able to work at night in town. There's all sorts of things they're not going to be able to do in town. So it's county right away. There has to be construction. There has to be room for the contractor. I can't put contracts out without giving the contractor enough room to build the project. It's just, I just need I need to provide them as much space as we can.
Yeah, thanks, kid. Okay, next we had Lindy Owen.
Hi, kid.
Hi.
Thank you. It's an interesting new proposal, and I wanted to ask what happened to the proposal we saw a year ago, I think. It was pretty much laid out with a different site. It had a different, well, it definitely put a staging zone in. It talked about traffic control and management for the 2 years that it was going to be, but that's one question. And I don't know if we should go back and forth, but the second question, the staging lane going on to the end of Santa Isabel is, I think, really wrong in that it's a deteriorated road. It's going to completely tear up everything on that little last stretch. So I would urge that you put some consideration into doing it down Turry Road, making it one lane for a part of it, or whatever you need to do. But that would be a lot closer to your site anyway. Another idea that I just was grabbed by was the idea that we keep the old bridge, the existing bridge, as the bike lanes, so that you can actually maybe make the new bridge a little narrower if you need to save money. And that gives us a beautiful viewing platform, a place for people to do stuff. I don't know if it's a distraction, but it's also the bike lane. And so, so I thought, what about leaving the old bridge? That's a question.
You want me? I don't think I'll be able to remember all the questions. Do you want me to
Write 'em down.
respond first, and then you can answer ask the next ones after I respond to the first ones?
Yeah,
Does that
like
work?
better myself.
Okay. Okay, I think your first question was, this is different from the previous plan that was brought to Locac, and I'm really surprised if that's the case, because this current plan matches. I started with the County Bridge Program in 2014, and I took this to Caltrans Seismic Strategy and had the Seismic Strategy Report approved, and this is what was approved in the Seismic Strategy Report. I'm not sure what these differences are from the previous Locac meeting, but this is what was approved in 2014, what the federal government and Caltrans said they would work on.
Are you working with a outside project group?
Oh yeah, we have an engineer called Dewberry Associates Incorporated, but they were the original engineer that also prepared the report that was approved by Caltrans headquarters. So this was it was like a 2-year process to go to Caltrans, and their top seismic people looked at it, and this is like where it came down to what they said they could live with a replacement for a seismic retrofit. And this does not differ from what was approved in the seismic strategy report, and that's all that would be funded. Anything that veers off from the seismic strategy report is not approved by the federal government, is not approved by Caltrans. So I'd have to go back and look at what was on the previous meeting, but this bridge and this alignment and the way we're doing it is, to my knowledge, what it's been throughout the whole project. There has been a shift of project managers on this. I'm not sure what might have happened there. I'll
send you the old plans.
Yeah, I can look into it, and if you would send me the old plans, that would be good. Yeah, I can look into it after the meeting. Yeah, I would like to know more about that. Again, I don't know the whole history about where these staging areas go, but like Turry Road, I would propose let's also have Turry Road as a staging area for the contractor. I tend to think, no, I'm going to get everywhere for the contractor. I'm not going to bar the contractor. And, when I first started this, in 15, 20 years ago, it was a lot more lax what they allowed. They used to allow, you didn't have to identify the staging areas, and the contractor could just go make deals with property owners and get their own staging areas. But that's not how it is now. Now they want it part of the environmental process, and they've really hemmed in the contractors. It's very hard to construct nowadays. They have a very limited work window. The amount of time that they're allowed to work is tiny because of all these environmental concerns. And the space issue with this one being on a public park, and the size of the project, I don't know why we're not getting Turry Road. I suspect there may be an archaeological site or some sort of species there or something else. So from my perspective, I would have to be I don't get to make the calls. I'm just an engineer at Public Works, but no, I support getting as many staging areas as possible. But certainly this comment is being heard by other folks, and I'll be taking it back through the review process and taking it to the engineers of revisiting the staging areas based on your comments.
Great. Well, thank you. Thanks,
Well,
Lindy.
and then-
We're running up
wait,
against the
wait,
clock
wait,
here,
wait,
so
wait.
we're gonna need to, we have 3 other people with their hands up. We're running out of time, so we're gonna need to give somebody, if anybody has something new question to ask.
Yeah, well, let me go down the list, and in the interest of time, if the questions, we can write our comments in, but if there's a direct question that Kid could answer, that would be great. So next I had Jean.
Yes, I'm Gene, also known as Skip Rothstein.
Hey, Gene.
I'm speaking for. I appreciate your presentation, and I'm speaking for the Friends of the El Moro Elfin Forest, which is immediately adjacent, and we're quite aware that the route under the bridge, under the current bridge, is a animal corridor that keeps the elfin forest from being an isolated island of, and the elfin forest animals will be severely impacted unless there's some sort of secure corridor. Has there been any provision in the plan so far to keep a clear corridor in the construction area?
You mean during
construction?
During construction, yeah. So temporary impacts. Now there's no way to build a massive bridge like this without the temporary impacts. And we realize that it's not going to be as good as it, for the animals and the critters and the plants and everything during construction. So what you're asking for is permit conditions that haven't been worked out. So this is that we have not got to that phase of the project yet, because it's in this preliminary phase of the CEQA NEPA process, where it's like we have to have our general, this is what we're doing and this is what it's going to do, and then we'll propose some mitigation measures and other things, and then after that's done, then we'll go to what's called a permitting phase, where we'll have to meet the conditions of the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, which would probably be the main one. Their permit would address your concerns.
Great.
So as we go through this permitting process outside the CEQA process, I'm going to have National Marine Fisheries Service. I'm going to have the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. I'm going to have the National Fish and Wildlife Service. I'm going to have the Regional Water Quality Control Board. I'm going to have the Coast Guard. I'm going to have the Regional Water Quality Control Board, if I didn't say that one, the Army Corps of Engineers. There's going to be so many compliance permits that are going to have to be had. They'll all have conditions that will probably be addressed, but we're not even that far along yet. What happens is the way the federal funding works, I have to get through this, the county has to get through this environmental certification process, and this allows us to move forward with our design. It allows me to notify the utility companies to say, hey, we're going to actually have a project here. How are you going to relocate your utilities? And it allows me to tell my engineer, hey, go ahead and start designing the final design of the project. This is our what we're going to move forward with. Right now, I'm not even allowed by my federal funding to say this is what we're going to move forward with. I can't pay my consultants to design the bridge past where we're at. You could definitely contact me after this, and I could put you in touch with our either our county environmental or our consultants environmental to see how they anticipate mitigating for the temporary impacts to wildlife during construction. I'm sure there will be a lot of stuff, particularly for the creek, that we will be doing. There will be a lot of orange fencing up for for the critters and animals, but those specifics, I don't think those have been worked out yet. But there is going to be where this project is located, there is going to be a lot of constraints and stuff put in to prevent the inconveniences to
A lot of
wildlife.
watchful eyes. on the
Yes,
project.
yes.
Well, thank
Okay.
you for your extensive
Yes.
answer.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
And who do we have next, Sandra?
Lindy Dowd. Dude.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. Along those same lines, I was wondering if in the design of the bridge, there has been consideration of improvement to wildlife crossing. I noticed that with the new versus the old rendering that you had there. The new one had the retaining wall, whereas the old one, it looked like it just had a grassy slope. So if an animal is running across the road, they had someplace to go instead of falling over the cliff. We have habitat on both sides of this road, and we often have animals that are hit, including that baby bear. So anyway, just wanted to know about that. Thank you.
Yeah, the existing bridge is 100 feet longer on that edge, and I think that riparian corridor access is really a big improvement for this project. The retaining wall, I think, will actually reduce the amount of roadkill on the road, because the ones going the one way are going the opposite way aren't going to see a cliff, they're going to see a big wall. So that's going to result in 50% less animals crossing where the retaining wall is. This is a high-speed road. I mean, there's only so much we can do to prevent, vehicle animal collisions. So hopefully that answers your question. There will be a rail on the retaining wall too, so the animals aren't going to just come up and run off a cliff like the Wile E. Coyote or something. Sorry, it's getting late. So hopefully that answered your question.
All right, and we have Patrick McGibney.
Thank you. It'll be very nice to know that we have a bridge that is not going to collapse during a major earthquake, but we're all living on ancient sand dunes, and our roads are built on ancient sand dunes. So our houses during liquefaction are going to be toast, not to mention the roads going to the bridge. So what's going to happen to the roads when we have liquefaction going on? Thank you.
It depends on the exact magnitude of the earthquake. Generally, a house on spread footing foundations, you're not going to have liquefaction right at the very top layer of your soil. So I don't think the reason why this bridge is going to collapse and be so, the way it is because it's on piles. Houses aren't on pile foundations, and standard wood framing is pretty light, and it's held up pretty resilient during most earthquakes. So I don't feel that that's necessarily the case. It's not sand that causes the problem. It's the fact that there's sand with that water pressure down there, and the way those piles are designed, they're relying on the soil holding them in place the way they are. When they designed those piles, they anticipated the soil holding it there. So I don't think that's the big thing. You're right. They have a significant amount of settlement. I don't know what the settlement is, but that was what they had when they had that recent New Zealand earthquake, which I think was about 4 years ago. When I looked at most of the pictures of that was highly dangerous. They had like about 2 feet of settlement behind the abutments. So if you were driving a car, you would come up and potentially ram into that 2 feet. I don't remember if this one has oh yeah, it does. It has, I have the plans here. And what they do at the end of the bridge is they put what's called a seismic approach slab. So at the 2 ends of the bridge, they put what's just a slab of concrete on the end that just hinges off the bridge. So when that settlement occurs at the edge of the bridge, it just settles down like that. So you get a ramp up to the bridge. So they'll put seismic approach slabs due to the settlement behind the abutment.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, thanks. Well, thank you very much for your presentation, Kid. We really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you. that it? I can go to bed?
That's it. You can go to
Thank
bed. All right. Have a good night. All right. So on to our business items. We will confirm the new seats for the different districts. We have Yale Corin for District 1, James Bishop for District 2, Larry Bender, District 3, and Deborah Howe for District 4. And then the supervisor has appointed our appointees to the board that aren't elected: Jim Stanfill, Trish Bartell, and Sue Morgenthaler. He had done that previously, but Blake was here. I'm not sure if he's here anymore, but he could do something more formal if required. But Supervisor Gibson already confirmed the appointees. So that concludes our new board for the next 2 years. With that, we have officer elections that will need to be done. So if we can unmute our board members. Yale?
Is this done in open meeting or is that a closed business meeting?
I don't know, is it closed or open?
No, the officers is open, is public. Electing the officers is,
okay.
It's public. And I don't know, did we want to hear anything from the election committee as far as turnout? I know
Sure.
it's late, but that.
Yeah, if you just a quick synopsis
update.
of it, what if you could?
Sue, since I was not there and you're the only one who was there on the election committee, I'm sorry.
Okay, hello. Okay, so we had our elections and I know there has been a lot of concern about the way we changed a date, but just real quickly, the policies and procedures are very vague. So we set up some dates that were some were in line with the policies and procedures, some not. And those when we came to it,
no, we just need to know about the day of the election.
Okay, the day of the election.
I mean, how was the turnout the day of the election?
Okay, we had 98 votes and the elections went very smoothly. And the candidate that won, you all know, was Deborah Howe. And we will be going back and looking at rewriting the bylaws a little bit to make sure that we're in line with everything we've had, because the bylaws were written by people who had never been through the elections before. So we might do a little work on that, but we've learned a lot. And thanks to everybody for voting. We appreciate it.
Yeah, and for everyone that volunteered on election day to count the ballots and work the polls. So
thank you, Sandra.
Thanks for making that happen. That was a ton of work, I know.
Okay. Are we moving now to the?
Yeah, so this is the board, the new board. So we have, go ahead. You had a question?
No, just I would like to know when are we gonna discuss officers?
Yeah, let's do that.
Just so we do follow the bylaws. Hang on, let me find one.
Yeah, so I think we nominate the chair and then the new chair then goes through the next, the other officers.
Okay, so in other words, we now have the new board and the new board will vote on the chairperson. Is that correct, Sandra?
Correct.
Including the new members? Are they voting also? Are the new members voting too?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, I would like to suggest some changes. Tim, you've done a great job. And I think that other members might maybe take have a chance to chair. I would like to nominate Trish, please. If she's willing.
Do you accept?
Yes, I will accept. I will accept.
I'll second the nomination. Is there anybody else that wants
And
to.
and I can nominate Sandra to be co-chair.
Okay, we're doing one at a time.
Oh, okay, sorry. I thought we just did it all together.
We do the election of the chair, and then the chair will, the
Okay,
elected
fine.
chair will then do the rest of the officers.
I
So
think
we're
we
just
have
chair
time.
right now.
Okay.
Sorry.
Tim, do you want to call a vote or?
Yeah, we have a motion and a second.
Yeah, I second.
So all in favor?
Aye.
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 Hi.
How many is that?
Oh, I'm supposed to count. 1, 2.
I
3,
guess
4,
Jim went to
5.
bed. Jim, are you?
Oh, Jim's gone, it looks like.
It's
So
very late. I mean, I almost was gone.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, we got 6.
It's like the yays have it.
Okay. Give Tricia a chance.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. All right, can we
And
get a
thank you, Tim.
nomination?
Yeah.
Thank you, Tim, very much for the past 2 years. It's been incredible.
Yes, Tim.
I've learned a lot.
Thank you.
Can I get a nomination for co-chair?
Well, I nominated Sandra. If she's
Okay.
willing.
Can I get a second on? Can
I'll
I get
second.
a second? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I think we have 6. 6 for Sandra for co-chair. All right, the next one would be secretary. Could I get a nomination for secretary? Can
If Sue
I
is still willing,
nominate Sue?
yeah, if Sue is still willing, please.
Sue is still willing.
Sue, would you be willing to do it again,
Yes.
please?
Yes, thank you.
Can I get a, Sue, would you? Okay, thank you. Could I get a second on Sue
I'll
for
second.
secretary?
I'll second.
Thanks, Lynette.
Okay, I nominate. Okay, thank you.
Thank
Thank you. I know it's late. Okay, all in favor, raise your hands. No one's raising hands.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, I think we have 6 for that too. Do we do treasure?
Yeah, we do.
Is that something that we do?
Who
You're
wants to be
supposed to be
treasurer?
treasurer
Okay.
and communications officer too. Now we added the communications.
Oh, I vote for Lynette for,
And-
communication.
Okay,
She's great. Let me tell you, she.
I'll
Um,
second.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, Lynette.
second. All in favor for Lynette?
Sure.
Okay. 6 for Lynette. Thank you, Lynette. We need a treasurer. Will anyone nominate themselves or anyone be willing to be the treasurer?
Oh,
Nobody?
How about our new members? Deborah, Jim, James, interested?
Well, maybe,
Or Christine? Well, she's no. She's
Yeah,
off.
she's leaving.
yeah. I mean, it's not a big job. I just don't want it, but it's not a big job. So maybe one of the new people. We don't have that much, such a big budget.
Well, maybe we'll postpone it till next month and somebody will rise to the occasion. Oh,
yeah,
and
for anybody. that
Yes,
might be considering-
let's postpone that one till next.
Can I just say one more quick thing? If anybody is considering
Okay,
voting,
my computer's dying.
oh, we're losing Trish. I just wanted to say that if anybody's considering,
I know, I'm losing.
all right, never mind.
and Blake had his hand raised and
He wants to be treasurer.
confirm the appointees.
Just if anyone is scared about being treasurer, I will gladly walk you through the steps it takes to get the community grant money. It's real easy. Other than that, you're pretty much just, cutting checks. So if that's the scary part, don't let that be the scary part.
Right.
Thank you, Blake.
Thank you. And Lindy, I mean, are we letting public speak too? Lindy wants to say something.
Okay, Lindy, you should unmute now. You should be able to unmute.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Blake, what is with the beautiful horses in the background of his Zoom that have the white across their faces?
Can we
Otherwise,
do this, please, first, before we start playing games here?
No,
We still
otherwise
have
I
outreach.
appreciate.
We still have outreach.
Yes.
I
Okay.
appreciate all of you.
Let's finish the Yes, let's finish elections. We have outreach. Sandra, would you be willing to keep that on?
Yeah, I
with
don't think
the
that's the
chair?
communications officer is the election, and then I'm just the chair of outreach.
Right.
That's not a, yeah, I'll still do that.
Okay. Okay.
Well, the new
Okay, that sounds-
member. The
All
new
right,
members.
so we don't have. I'm sorry, I'm losing, my computer has had enough tonight.
I think I make a motion to adjourn.
We now have a chairman, a co-chairman. I agree. Thank you.
I just want to remind
See you
the new
guys
members.
next month.
Okay.
I just want to remind the new members that we will welcome you to any of the committees, since we have to all be working on the committees. So maybe next month we can,
Divvy it up.
present the committees and make a pitch for you guys to join them.
And it's all on the website. You can find about the committees and pick one to be on, or two, or three.
Great. Well, thanks
All
everybody
right,
for coming out.
adjourn.
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
Okay, good night.
Okay, bye.
Thank you. We're adjourned.